Hey everybody, we're going to be going live in just 1 second, but I'm going to go get some coffee before we do that, so we will be with you in just one moment. And we are live here on Plus One EXP's Roll for Content channel. My name is Tony Vacinda. I'm Chief Alchemist here at Plus One EXP, which is a weird little brand that multi-classes in tabletop game design, beard, and skincare alchemy in the Bardic College of Content Creation. Our hope and desire is to help amazing designers find great players who love their games and amazing players find great designers whose games they can love. We do that in a lot of different ways, but the most fun way is sitting down and playing those games with those designers. Today is no different except for the fact that it is part 2 of a 2-shot where we normally do 1-shots with Jason Cordova, one of the creators of The Between Ghosts of El Paso. It's an expansion or a parallel game, or in some way, shape, or form related to the original game. Jason will tell you specifically how he wants that to be phrased, The Between, which we played here before, but we are playing yesterday, so if you missed part 1, go back and check that, but we'll do our best to kind of catch you up for part 2 today. Jason, why don't you tell people who you are, what you do, but also how I should have introduced The Between Ghosts of El Paso.
Certainly. Thank you. I am Jason Cordova. I am the founder of the Gauntlet gaming community and the head of Gauntlet Publishing. I have created a couple of games of my own. Brindlewood Bay and The Between are the 2 main ones. And I would say The Between Ghosts of El Paso, I would probably call it a spin-off campaign of The Between, because it's not a different game, right? But
Right.
it can't. You have to have The Between to play it. So yeah, it's kind of in a weird space, I guess.
I think campaign setting or spin-off campaign is very good gamer friendly language, and so excellent, love it. Let's meet the other folks we'll be playing with today. 2 folks we get to play with yesterday for the first time, and excited to sit down and play more with them today. Judd, why don't you tell people who you are, what you do, where they can find you online?
Hey, my name is Judd. I produce a podcast called Daydreaming About Dragons and write in a blog called Githyanki Diaspora. And I'm sure if you put those search terms in, you'll get to me eventually. And yeah, I've published, I've written a few things and self-published a few things in the indie RPG scene. And love playing and sharing my passion for it. So if you want to read or hear about that, track me down. Thanks.
Awesome. And Amanda, why don't you tell people who you are, what you do, where they can find you online?
Hi there, I'm Amanda, pronouns are she, her. I'm just kind of around playing games and bugging people about games and watching games, and I just really like games, so I'm kind of all over the place. You can find me on Twitter at noamandastop. Stop is spelled the cute way, STAHP. You can also find me random places online under the name I Am a T-Rex, and that's about it.
Awesome. Very excited to play with y'all again today. We covered Lines and Veils yesterday. We also covered them ahead of time. And the wonderful character keeper we have that is this a Ben work in progress? Is this an Arctosaur?
It is a Ben. It is a Ben Bond work in progress.
Excellent.
And yes, hopefully there'll be a finished one pretty soon.
Awesome. Jason, I'm going to hand things over to you to catch us up, take us back between, whatever you want to do. Mr. Coltis is asking for a small recap, but I'm pretty sure we'll do a little bit of that as we get going also too. I'm going to hand things over to Jason to take us back into the game.
Yeah, so I will grant your wish, chat person. I didn't catch the name, sorry. Yes, so the characters are playing members of the Vigilance Committee. This is in El Paso in the late 19th century, after the Civil War, the American Civil War, but before the railroad came through. And every 6 years in El Paso, there is this seasonal phenomenon called the Wounded Knight, and it takes place in the fall of that 6th year. And visually, every night, the moon is red, which is why it's called the Wounded Knight, because it looks like a bullet wound in the sky. But practically, what it means is the veil between the lands of the living and the land of the dead are thinned, and ghosts and other things pass over into the land of the living. Now, it didn't come up last time, but one interesting thing about the setting is El Paso del Norte, which is now Ciudad Juarez in modern day times, but the other side of the river, it is not affected by the Wounded Knight. It's only on the northern side of the Rio Grande in El Paso where it's affected. And so the Vigilance Committee has to sort of deal with ghostly problems before they become a major problem for the community of El Paso. And the one we're dealing with for this 2-shot is the Ghost Riders of Sawtooth Ridge. A year ago, 3 Texas Rangers were massacred in Whispering Springs Canyon. And a fourth ranger, Jimmy Pike, managed to escape the massacre but has not been seen since. 1 week ago, the 3 dead rangers turned up at a mining camp, their spectral bodies riddled with oozing green bullet holes, and they were asking for Jimmy Pike. They're trying to find Jimmy Pike. From the story you got, it seems like these dead rangers are like easily confused, and they frequently don't know like where they're at or kind of where they're going. Like they had a hard time just finding El Paso, even though El Paso's like right there where they kind of turned up. And so you have a bit of a lead on them in the sense that they're not super well equipped to go find Jimmy Pike, right? And so you are going to figure this out, because if they just start accusing people of being Jimmy Pike, or if they just start like hurting people to get to Jimmy Pike, that's a problem. But it could also be that Jimmy Pike deserves to be caught by these 3 rangers. Maybe he did something that that they have a justification for wanting to kill him. We've determined that they do in fact want to kill him. And so in order to figure out what's going on here, you've decided to see what is their motivation before you try to find Jimmy. Because if you try to find Jimmy, he's going to get word and he's going to run. But if you can kind of just figure out what the deal is first, then you can kind of approach the situation with more information and decide what to do. Are you going to help Jimmy, or are you going to help the Ghost Riders? And so our first question is, why do the Ghost Riders want Jimmy Pike dead? You currently have 6 clues on that. They are, all the players can all see it, but I'm going to read them out loud. The characters found a photograph showing the 4 rangers plus an unnamed 5th ranger. First clue. Second clue, the Ghost Riders headed out in the direction of El Paso, but one of them came back to the massacre site. Third clue, the bones of the dead rangers in the massacre site are still there, many of them, and they've been arranged into a strange circular symbol. Fourth clue, there is a story about how Jimmy Pike once saved a group of Apache children from Fort Bliss soldiers. Fort Bliss figures prominently because it's right next to El Paso, and the miners they sent word to Fort Bliss before they sent word to El Paso about the Ghost Rangers. Fifth clue, an old Texas Ranger badge was being pocketed by a miner. And the last clue is Fernando da Silva, one of the miners, and Jimmy, prior to the war being finished, they were in the war. They actually abandoned their posts during the war. And so that is another clue. Now, you have 6 clues. You don't have to use them all to answer this first question. You can save some of them for the next question that will unlock once you answer this one. But I think it might be good to we'll kick off with a couple of things before we start the day phase. First, we have to do some Janus Mask narrations from last time. And then second, if you're ready to answer this first question, I think we should go ahead and do it. So what do we think?
I think we're ready to answer a question, or at least to use the move and discuss it.
Yeah, let's take a stab at it. Yeah, let me look at let's read the move out loud for folks. It says, when the hunters have an open, freewheeling discussion about the answer to a question, once they've gathered a number of clues equal to at least half of the complexity, and the complexity here is 4, so you've got plenty, and you reach a consensus, you roll plus the number of clues incorporated into the answer, or otherwise explained away, and then minus the mystery's complexity. And so essentially you start at -4 because of complexity 4, and every clue you work in, you kind of work that minus off to get it to a plus or flat or however you want to do it. And then you roll to see if you're correct. And that's sort of how it goes. But you still have to come up with a plausible answer, despite the fact the dice determine whether you're correct or not. So what do we think?
I think one of the key clues is that the bones of the dead rangers have been rearranged into a strange circular symbol. The other things kind of hint at the past, but I think that particular clue really is going to be related to the motive, something maybe like a ritual of some sorts?
One thing you're allowed to do in the game is you're allowed to add in context that might be helpful in answering the question. So I never said what the symbol was. I just said it was a symbol. You all can give that meaning, right? And say, well, the symbol was actually this, and so that's what it means, right? So
it's really funny because for me, one of the opposite things stood out. It was actually the combination of them abandoning their post and the rumor about Jimmy saving a group of Apache children. To me, like, it indicated almost Jimmy turning away from the
His duties,
motives
right?
of the expansion of the westward expansion and the travesties that were being committed on locals, and potentially having beef with other people who did not, or who had done things that he found particularly unsavory. So those aren't at odds with each other at all, but that's the piece that kind of jumped out to me most directly.
That feels salient to me too, because they are kind of like of a piece, right? Because we know that the purpose of Fort Bliss is to basically scout out Apache in the frontier as part of their remit to defend the frontier lands. And something the Rangers did is they helped with that, right? So that's one thing. They are of a piece, though, because the Fort Bliss is currently being staffed by Union soldiers, right? So, yeah, Judd, any thoughts?
The one that stood out to me was Jimmy saving Apache children. That was definitely that seems to be like a key pivotal turning moment for those relationships and something turning murderous. So yeah, I'm curious to work that in. I don't have much of a theory bringing it all together though. Not yet, but
well, I guess the next question is, why might that have factored into, like, I mean, because ultimately the ghostwriters want to kill Jimmy, which implies that Jimmy was responsible for their death, or at least either intentionally or accidentally responsible for it, I guess. So
yeah.
I mean, and the other thing we could work in is that he had, there was another person there who we don't know yet. So maybe, 1 on 3 feels like long odds, but 2 on 3 in an ambush is doable. So it could be that Jimmy and this accomplice, realizing that the other folks are gonna, not go along with their newfound way, ambushed them and yeah.
That's an interesting insight, because even though it's not a capital C clue, it's interesting context. I mentioned it last time that Whispering Springs Canyon is perfect for an ambush, right? Like, if you get whoever's down in the bottom can be ambushed pretty easily.
Well,
and
definitely
could have done it.
When we saw the old Texas Ranger badge in the hands of a miner, my immediate thought was, this is 5th Ranger.
Oh, it might be the 5th Ranger.
Of some sort. That this is one and the same person. And so even kind of having a conduit of, like, we know Fernando is a miner, right? We know Jimmy and Fernando were stationed together. We know there was a 5th Ranger. Like, is there a group of 3 individuals, Fernando, Jimmy, and 5th miner, 5th Ranger, who potentially were at odds against these other 3? I also, like, if we want to look at the bones of the dead have been rearranged into a strange circular pattern, it seems unlikely that Jimmy would have done something that could have essentially come back on himself in a spectral way intentionally. But I almost wonder, is there and I don't want to get into any sort of weird fetishization, so if somebody line this if it doesn't make sense, but is there some sort of intention? I don't think we have to fetishize it at all, or even bring that element that I was going to bring in. Never mind. Was there an intentional desecration of the remains to damn these souls, right? Like, was it not only that this was an ambush, but the ambush also was intended to leave these men in a damned state, not knowing potentially that it would give them the ability to track down some form of vengeance during the Wounded Night?
Ooh.
Feeling good. Yeah, it's feeling good. Yeah.
What if into the lead up to the Wounded Night, because this all happened a year ago, right? What if in the lead up to the Wounded Night, these Rangers were abusing their duties to be a little extra sadistic, a little extra murderous, perhaps. And Jimmy and possibly this Fifth Ranger had second thoughts about that. Maybe.
Well, and they were just supposed to scout anyway. They weren't supposed to actually do anything,
So what if these Rangers were being influenced by some sort of ghostly thing? Maybe this Fifth Ranger was a ghost, or maybe the extra bad Rangers were being influenced by the Wounded Knight as it sort of amped up.
Fernando da Silva did mention something about entities in the mine.
Yeah.
So I don't know, there might be something there.
Another element to throw in is maybe there was a miscalculation about where the ambush happened. Maybe it was supposed to happen south of the river so that they couldn't come back in the Wounded Knight.
Oh,
and then realizing that they that they had actually perpetrated the ambush north of the river. It could be that the circle was an attempt to keep them at bay, but it just failed horribly and angered the spirits even more.
What if this thing in the mines are like a weird pet cemetery thing where if you spend a lot of time in that mine and you die in the vicinity, you will come back?
Okay, so let's take a look at the clues just to sort of recenter ourselves here.
Yep.
I love the idea that the Fifth Ranger is actually Jimmy's conspirator. I think that's pretty great. I think it's curious that the Rangers aren't going after the Fifth Ranger, that they're specifically going after Jimmy. But I like it as an idea. I like the idea of the basic conflict between Jimmy and the Rangers is their brutality towards these Apache. They were going to do something to these Apache children. I like that the abandoning of the posts between Fernando and Jimmy indicates that Jimmy had a connection to the mine, right? Like he knows people there, and that feels important, right? And I think the Texas Ranger badge speaks to that as well. It feels like it was almost a conspiracy between some miners and Jimmy. Maybe the Fifth Ranger is now a miner. I don't know, but a conspiracy to kill the three Rangers feels really salient, right? So yeah,
I like the three, especially as confused as these Rangers were. I almost like the three sets of horse track, but one goes back. I like the idea of the Fifth Ranger as a conspirator, potentially even the one who did the ambush. And was it Jimmy's job to just lead them there? Did one horse go back because after they went to town, Jimmy wasn't there, and so they went back to check for the body again to see if Jimmy had died there or not? Like they woke up and were not certain if Jimmy had actually expired there, and they were just at that point just looking for him. And this is part of the pacing out process.
It's established that they're easily confused, so this makes sense, right?
And so them confirming that Jimmy's body was not there in their confusion. I like that as kind of this extra thing that he was the one who leads in. I +1 feels fine for a roll. I mean, we can go for the dead bones of a Ranger when rearranged in a circular pattern, but
well, the next question is going to be like, where is Jimmy? And so if you think one of those clues might be more helpful towards the question of
the
three
Jimmy sets of horse clues does help with that more. I mean, and what I was trying to avoid earlier was just implying like Native American magic being used, which doesn't violate any of our veils. And as long as we're all on board with the fact that is not an inherently problematic thing, I'm okay with it.
I don't think we necessarily have to get into like Native myth so much just to at all to say that like Fernando thinks there's a creature in the mine, right? Like there's something in the mine.
That's true.
And like it could well be, I don't know what the connection is to the conspiracy. Like I think that's basically the question we have to ask is like, why did these people agree to help Jimmy do this? Like that feels like the key question to me. Like why did they agree to why did they agree to conspire with him? Like
this? I mean, this just might be me trying to put cults into everything because I think that's fun.
I love cults.
What if the miners have a sort of cult around whatever happens to be in the mine?
Miner cult is very good.
And if Jimmy used to work at the mine before he was a ranger,
that's the connection with Fernando.
Right.
Then
I like the bones being rearranged, having been arranged in a circular pattern as an act Jimmy did afterwards to attract whatever's in the mine, serve whatever's in the mine, do something about. I think that
leads
feels
to
very good.
Yeah, that hints at the occult aspect. So I guess then I guess the one thing that doesn't that's suddenly not super salient is what was it about Jimmy trying to save the Apache children from Fort Bliss soldiers? I mean, I like if this was something that the creature wanted, what's the connection there?
I think it still could just be that he's maybe just a good guy and he doesn't
Just
want
hates
to
them.
see
Yeah,
that sort of violence.
Yeah.
Just because he's in a creepy cult doesn't mean he's pro-violence against children.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, this is good. Let's review. So it sounds like your theory is that essentially this was a conspiracy between Jimmy and some folks at the mine. Jimmy has a connection to the mine because that's where he went with Fernando da Silva after they abandoned their post in the war. At some point, Jimmy becomes a Texas Ranger. Maybe even this other miner becomes a Texas Ranger, which is why he has the badge. And that's the fifth. We can even add that context. We can say that person you saw resembles, it's only a year ago, resembles the person in the picture, right? And so it speaks to this conspiracy. The strange circular symbol and indeed the sort of contextual conversations with Fernando suggest that the miners are into some weird shit down in the mine. They've got something going on there. And so when it came time to make a sacrifice to whatever this entity is in the mine, Jimmy, pissed off about the Rangers' brutality towards these Apache who they were just supposed to be scouting, offers them up.
I like it.
I like it too. I think it's really great. Yeah, it's really good, and it actually makes the next question really interesting because you have to decide what to do with Jimmy. So let's have a die roll. You have a +1 with 5 clues worked in. So Tony, why don't you roll it since you're our host today?
That's a 2. we've got another dice coming though. Hold on.
Okay. I thought it was total 2. How's it even possible?
Yeah, so we got a 7 + 1, 8.
Okay, good. All right. You just need a correct answer, so you're good to go. Okay, great. So you are correct. And the next question is, where is Jimmy Pike hiding? Now, it opens up 2 opportunities, either of which can be pursued. When you answer the question, where is Jimmy Pike hiding, you can then either resolve the threat by helping the Ghost Riders take their revenge on Jimmy, or resolve the threat by laying a trap for the Ghost Riders and then destroying them, or otherwise getting rid of them.
Cool.
So
let's see.
I think the cult thing makes it a complicated question. Jimmy sounds like he might be a good guy, but he's also maybe worshiping a cosmic entity down in the mine. So who knows?
Well, and one of my favorite things about the Between that until this moment felt a little bit less evident in Ghost of El Paso, the setting is there's a level at which you are also like you are the monsters and bad people also too.
In some sense, yeah.
In some sense, right?
Not as overtly as in regular Between, but yeah.
No. Well, that's what I'm saying. Vigilance Committee feels a whole, and a lot of the tones don't have that same weight to them, and so, but even being in that spot brings that in very strongly. Of you could decide, these are cultists and they're bad, and we're gonna, which we could, I guess. I'm only one person playing.
Yeah. It was up to the 3 of you. Okay, good. I love it. Let's go ahead and do our Janus mess that we need to do from last time. So who owes some narration for that? Who marked it last time and didn't do the thing?
I believe I did.
All right, read us the prompt and then go ahead and do it.
On Hunters, Inevitable. I'm right down at the bottom. I think I was going for another back one. Narrate a flashback to a time of great violence when you met your sibling War and finished his work. Yeah, I mean, I think we've got to go. The last one was biblical, so let's bring it up a little bit more towards the present, to the bloodiest war of the Civil War, the bloodiest battle of the Civil War, Antietam.
Yeah.
And I think my sibling War likes to walk around in like Napoleonic, war gear, like a Napoleonic war general. I don't think anyone can see us, or if they do, it just doesn't make sense, or we're weird cosmic entities walking around this field. And I think I'm probably looking more like a doctor with a bone saw, and he says something like, "This is glorious. Like this is new territory for me." And I say, you really should see the doctor's tents and see what your tools are doing. It's pretty gruesome, and we're standing over a dying soldier, and my brother looks and kind of nods appreciatively and walks, keeps walking, and I kneel down and say, "You've done enough. Go to the next place." And I think I'm stammering because there's just so much death around that it's even gotten to me. And I close his eyes. I think, like, I touch him, and like it's that familiar, like, what my touch is death, but this time it's like a shudder of relief, from wooden splintered bullets causing infections. And he goes to peace, and I get up and pick up my saw and my doctor's case and chase after my brother, who wants to see a cavalry charge that's happening on some cannon, and excitedly. And yeah, that's it.
Fantastic. Thank you. Annie, did you have one?
No, I was rolling with all of my failures yesterday.
Oh, that's right. You were. What about you, Ambrose?
I had done mine before we departed last time.
Well, in that case, let's go ahead and roll into the day phase then. Now, if you were playing this in a full campaign, if that's what we were doing, I would introduce a brand new threat. So the Vigilance Committee would be dealing with the Ghost Riders plus a new thing. But we're not doing that today. We're going to stick with the one we've got. And otherwise, we just talk about what we want to do today. So it's the same as last time, except now you might want to clear some of your conditions. Like Ambrose, you have a couple. You might want to get rid of Numb. The Eyes of Gold is a pretty fun one. You might not want to clear that.
I'm not clearing Eyes of Gold. Yeah. Not at all.
Numb is pretty cool. It was pretty probably due to be clear. But in any case, the way you do it is you have what's called a vulnerable move scene with another character where one of you is doing your vice. And then you basically just sort of have a scene that kind of shows how you are shaking the condition, right, as you're talking or otherwise helping each other. So you can do that in the day phase. That's one of the things you can do. Obviously, you should continue the investigation in some way. You can try to answer a dawn question in the affirmative. If you're very clever, you can do all of them at once, depending on how the scene is framed up. So yeah, that's those are some ideas. Let's check in though with Mr. Slade. Mr. Slade, did you return to El Paso, or are you still back at Fort Bliss?
I think I walked the miner at the fort back to the mine, and then walked back to El Paso.
Okay, so you're in El Paso. All right. Well, so what do you want to do today?
I think I want to go talk to my sister. There was a link between the Rangers and that family that she's married into. So I think I want to kind of ask about that family and see if she knows any.
Remind me of this link.
Yeah, I'm having trouble thinking of it too. I might be wrong. There was like a the Shield family. Am I making that up?
She's a Shields, yeah. And she's married. But she's we didn't establish that she was connected to any of the Rangers. The Rangers just happened to park by the homestead.
Oh, got it. It was just they just happened to be by there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, then that's real tenuous.
You can certainly go by the campsite though. I mean,
yeah, I will go by the campsite.
You might be able to see things that the others can't see. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, good. Okay. Let's check in with Annie and Ambrose then. Do we want to have a scene, a vulnerable move scene?
So,
or
yeah, and just because I think it's interesting, I didn't realize this. I was going to do this anyways, but Annie's character cannot ask me, correct,
no?
but I can ask them. So the kid cannot ask whoever their older sibling is. But yeah, no, I do. It's also not. I don't know that I'm going to invite Annie to it. Whenever Annie wakes up in her tent, it's because I am banging on I'm shaking it. And yelling for you to get up. And I think Annie is normally earlier to rise than Ambrose, probably given our temperaments. So this is not the norm at all, probably. But yeah, I'm Annie. I need you to come out here. We have to talk to you.
Rosie, what are you doing waking me up so early?
Look, the three of us have discussed it. It's time for a family meeting.
The three of you have discussed this.
And you hear like loud brain all of a sudden behind me also too. You get yourself proper and then you meet us out here. I've got the coffee on.
It doesn't take very long for Annie to get ready. I think she probably slept in her clothes, hauling on her hat and pulling together her braid. She's got a lollipop going. You better be waking me up for something good and not something to do with those mules.
Well, it's got to do with all of us.
Oh, jeez.
You come out. I'm sitting beside the fire, making some coffee, with the two, with Augustin and Ambrose, who Rosie, for those of you who are joining us, it's the two mules that pull his carriage. He believes they are inhabited by his two brothers, who are departed, and are Annie's older brothers as well. Yesterday you did make it around to talking to, and one of the mules brays, and I go, look, Augustin, we agreed on this. I'm the one doing the talking. I know you have things you want to say to her, but we all agreed I would speak for the three of us. Augustin and I were we understand you're growing as a woman. I saw you yesterday, and I've seen you shoot before, but I don't know that I've ever seen anything quite like that. We were talking, and we just, we think it's time for you, to start pulling your weight in the family business.
Like, Annie is scowling. She still actually holds out a tin for you to pour some coffee into. Like, this is not the first time a talk like this has happened. And she kind of scowls and she says, Rosie, this is almost worse than the time you had one of your mules try and explain where babies come from.
Look. You learned your lesson. I mean, like, it was graphic in a number of ways, but I mean, like,
oh geez,
the conversation worked as well as it possibly could have. But here's the deal: if you can shoot like that, why are we not capitalizing on it? If you want to become this big famous law person, why are you not working to help your legend of renown? I mean, here's the deal. Whether you're good or not doesn't matter. There's money to be made there either way.
Rosie, this is not about making money. This is about leaving my name, leaving something bigger than me when I go.
Right. Big name, big money. It's all I'm saying. It's not one or the other. And
well, what's your pitch then? I just go around shooting everyone, and you make money off it.
I look. I look over at Aquinas and I say, I mean, this part was your idea. You are you going to tell her? Well, I mean, yeah, that's the basic part of it. But I mean, there's a lot more that goes into it than that. Look, here's the deal. I mean, you got the shooting under control, and I get it. I mean, like, you're good at it. But again, I'm not asking you to do anything extra than let me and your brothers take care of the business side, right? And you you take care of the shooting, and we'll help your name get out there, and you can do good along the way. We do that sometimes.
You don't understand, Rosie. This is bigger than you. This is bigger than you and us and this little cart and your 2 mules. This is bigger.
Right.
This is bigger even than El Paso or the Wounded Knight. This is, if I start treating this mission of mine like some kind of game, well, I'm just going to lose. This is not a game for me.
I think at this point, you'll notice I'm not interrupting the scene.
No, go ahead.
But you will see Sidewinder Shirlene kind of kicking rocks, walking down the street near where the wagon is parked. I assume you're still in town, or you're back in town. Yeah, that's it.
Look.
Annie's eyes are following Sidewinder Shirlene as she walks down the road.
She's like doing that thing where she's pretending to be like really like casual and not paying attention, but she's clearly like looking for you.
I think this becomes very easy because there becomes an extended debate between all 3 of your brothers with a lot of brain and a lot of loud talking on the best way to incorporate exactly what you want for the next, minute 45 seconds.
I love it.
Why don't you 3 talk it out?
Well, here's the deal. If
all your big plans.
If killing is what you want, here's the deal. There's plenty of bounties out there. And so if you want to make a name doing good, if you want to make a name doing killing, like we can work with that. We'll find the bounties, we'll bring them to you. And if you want to be the Wildcat Kid or the Wild Winnebago or whatever you want to be, like why it doesn't have an A in it, I'll never know. But like if you don't want to respect mom and dad's wishes, that's fine. We can help make that happen. And here, you know what? Like we don't have to resolve it right now. Why don't you just think on it? And I give I give a piece of sugar to each of the mules, that I give you a piece of wrapped candy. Also to just to finalize the conversation.
There's this one little shot of, one of the mules munching on the candy, one of the other mules munching on the candy, Annie munching on the candy, and at that moment there's like a strange resemblance in the family.
I think you've that was a great scene. I think for the Vice, you could go either way. It could be the penny candy or the talking to the mules, whoever wants to claim it. But let's talk about conditions first. I think you make a good case for clearing Numb, Ambrose, just because you were so animated in that conversation. Annie, do you feel better about questioning things?
I think talking that out a little bit with Ambrose, I feel a little more secure in my dedication to the cause.
Okay.
And less in like, is this the right thing? Am I doing this right?
I love it. Go ahead and clear that.
Yeah. And I'll just add in, part of it narratively was trying to see even if for their own ends, your brother's supporting this vision you have of yourself of something bigger, even if they were not doing it for good altruistic reasons.
Yeah. In a very specific lens.
Right.
And I think I'll let Ambrose. I'll let you have the bonus because the mules felt like the most salient thing in terms of the vices. You get to choose in the move after you clear conditions. You get to choose. Also, you can either invite Annie to ask you a question about your shady past, which you have to answer truthfully, if not necessarily completely. Or you can go ahead and stumble on a clue related to where Jimmy Pike might be found. So.
I really love the question, but since it's a one shot, because we're going to write it like we stole it, we're going to stumble onto a clue, I think.
Okay. You as a player get to actually create that clue, so be thinking about it.
Oh, that's right. And it basically can't solve the question.
It can conclusively solve it. Yeah.
Be...
It can really lean in one direction, but it can't
Sure.
definitively. Yeah. Let's check in with Slade then. So Slade, you're heading out to the Rangers campsite. Now, when Annie went out there in the day, there was no sign of the Rangers, But you have a move called Death's Gloaming Gaze. Now, that lets you see really well in the dark. It lets you see into sort of the spectral realm. The implication is that you can generally see things that people can't see, right? That's even in your character description.
Cool.
So knowing that you have like more sensitivity, how would you approach the situation?
Yeah, I think I walk. Are the bones still arranged? Like, is it?
That was at the massacre site.
Okay.
In the campsite, this is the one right outside the Shields homestead. It's just like a camp. I'll describe it again. It's the one where they have bedrolls and a tent and stuff, but there's not much other evidence that anyone's there. Like there's no food or anything.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah, I think Slade will mumble something to himself about these poor, confused, restless souls, and will kick the bedrolls and stuff into like where they had made a fire and just kind of light it, because it's all useless and they don't need it anymore. And in doing that is hoping to illuminate something real that the ghosts might actually need, or that that angry specters might actually have use for.
I like it. Make the information move with sensitivity.
Cool. Sensitivity. Okay. Oof, I'm rolling hot. 10.
Nice. You get your clue. Indeed. Let me take a look at the list real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. The smoke from the fire that you create, it is blowing in a direction that is against the wind.
Right.
It's blowing in a southwesterly direction. That's your clue. Just the fact that the smoke is behaving strangely.
Yeah.
It might speak to where Jimmy is, or not.
Got it.
Where he is, or where he is not. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. What is southwesterly from here? Or
no,
should you?
Well, I'm going to let you fill that in whenever you guys get ready to.
Got it. Cool. Got it. Yeah, I think I look off in that direction and realize what it is and say, and then head back.
Yeah.
Head back to talk to the siblings.
Indeed. I think as you are heading back, you overhear your sister, because you're right by her house, or Slade's sister, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Your sister. We've learned about your siblings a bit already, your actual siblings. You hear Annette Shields saying, "Don't come one step further. Stay right where you're at. Now, I've tolerated you all being here on my land because, well, these are strange times. But just go on and get out of here."
Yeah.
If you go to investigate, you'll see that in basically the front of her house are 3 men in long duster jackets with rifles and pistols. And you see her sticking a rifle out the window, trying to get them to leave. And the 3 men speak in unison. They say, "We seek the coward Jimmy Pike. If you know under which rock he hides, we request you turn that rock over. And if he is in the wind, we request you tell us true which way that wind blows. And if our work has already been done for us, we request you show us his coward's grave and then lend us a shovel. What do you do?
Gentlemen, Annette Shields is a little out of your league. You might want to tussle with someone a little more your speed.
They turn to face you.
I'm Mr. Slade.
The riders wear long canvas dusters. They're each armed with rifles, pistols, knives. They wear an assortment of broad-brimmed hats that shadow their faces. You can actually see their Texas Ranger badges on their lapels or their vests.
Right.
And in the day, you see the bullet holes, but it doesn't have that same green vapor ooze that was previously described.
Hmm.
And they always speak with one voice and say, "We know you well, creature of the underworld. Are you angry that we managed to slip the noose?"
I'm not angry. I just want to set things back to right. Me and the rest of the Vigilance Committee are looking for Jimmy too. Why don't we combine forces and see what we can all do together? I was just heading back to talk to my colleagues. Why don't you come with me?
And they look at each other. And they once again speak simultaneously. "We know nothing of your committee. We know only that the coward Jimmy Pike deserves to die, that we will have our revenge.
I got it.
If you find him, you know where to find us." And they kind of like just materialize on their horses.
Right.
And then their horses, which don't function like horses should function.
Right.
They're ungainly. Like when the horses turn to go back to the campsite, they do like a 3-point turn.
Right.
They're super awkward. And then they go back to the campsite. They're not following you, but they are probably going to forget they even met you.
Right.
If Annette will even say, as she comes out, she'll say, "They have come to the house 3 times now, making the same challenge. And it doesn't matter how many times I tell them I don't know where Jimmy Pike is. They're very confused. Something about crossing over from wherever they come from addles their minds."
Yeah, the river Styx. It does that. That's how we designed it.
I don't know what you're talking about, Eli. You're being obtuse again.
I think Slade laughs, which is awkward at best, and he says, "I'm getting the vigilance. I was just going to see the rest of the vigilance committee to settle this."
Well, be quick about it. I've tried to be neighborly, even a good hostess of sorts for these 3, but they don't know what they're doing. They're just wandering around threatening people.
I get it. We're working on it. We'll step it up.
Thank you. And then she kind of goes to, she's like, "You didn't come by to get Mother's body?"
Yeah, I had to spend the night out at the mines and Fort Bliss. It wasn't. I think I realized I haven't slept, right? And
she's like, "Well, you might as well come in now."
I've got to go talk to the St. Rose siblings.
She's like,
we have to get this done. Not everybody has your know-how. These folks that trio poking around could have a lot more trouble against people who aren't as excellent as you are.
"Eli, she is our mother. She has to be put in the ground."
I know. I'll be back.
And she goes back into she's like, and she's heading to the house. She's like, do you want a sarsaparilla or something?"
No, thank you.
And she goes inside.
Yeah. I'll head over to Ambrose and Wildcat.
Very good. Oh yeah, Tony.
I was going to say, I think the clue that we stumble upon narratively, even though I'll create, I think it's actually more fun a little bit if Annie is the one who stumbles upon it while I'm arguing with the brother. I think once you make eye contact with Sidewinder Sheila, she like kind of quickly, like, you know, after a little bit of back and forth, like, you know, starts like moves off very quickly, very intentionally. I think what kind of like trying to stuff something in her pocket, but in that way that causes her to actually lose it because she's doing it so quickly. And I think you stumble on a letter from Jimmy that has kind of a cryptic remark at the bottom about where his location might be. Like it's somewhat of a riddle. But she was enticed into town for some sort of service for Jimmy.
Oh, Sidewinder Charlene was.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Sorry, Charlene, not Sheila.
We've been calling her the wrong name. Like I called her Sally and Sue.
I think we've gone back and forth a couple times.
Well, no, she did on herself. She was going to call
okay.
herself Sidewinder Sue. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. She had done. Yeah. So, but if that works, yeah, I think a letter from Jimmy to Sheila is a clue.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I like it. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Why don't we go and take a break?
That sounds great. We are going to take about a 5-minute break, and we're going to come back in just a few minutes to keep on exploring the location of Jimmy in the Between Ghosts of El Paso. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Oh, by the way, viewers, if you have not yet, head on over to TTRPG.link /elpasogame to go check out Ghost of El Paso over on Drive-Thru RPG. You can also link out over there to the Between, the core game that this is a campaign spin-off setting for. If you have never picked up or played the Between, we have a great actual play with Jason over on our channel, and there are tons of great instances of actual play out there, but it's a phenomenal game to play this time of year, or in my opinion, anytime. But we'll be back in just a few minutes to keep on playing. And we are back probing deeply into the narrative processes of Jason Cordova. Before we dive back into the between, the question asked, discussed in the chat was there's a lot of great dual sibling drama. Was that an off the cuff thing or was that an intentional thing? How did that work for you?
Yeah, so it's a funny thing, actually. So the way the threat is written, Annette Shields, or indeed in the setting with this threat and some other mysteries in the game, Annette Shields is the sister of Eli Shields, who is the gravedigger in town. That's a setting thing in this version of El Paso. But since Judd decided to make Mr. Slade the gravedigger for the town, I decided to go ahead and just riff off that and make Annette his sister. So yeah.
I love it. But I just, and it's one of the things I was like, it's so hard to tell because it 100% could just be happenstance. Like it could
but
be.
It fit together nicely.
Right. It did,
yeah.
But it also, it's the kind of thing that I can see just Jason in the moment weaving up because you're great GM. And so it's just very cool to see sometimes how these different pieces will build, as well as in the between and in a lot of other games that you design, the table is helping tell some of those stories. So we see those things kind of fill out in different ways. But it was just, chat was commenting, we were commenting on it. Your vocal quality also came up, of course. Best vocal.
Yeah, the
fry.
chat is beautifully complimentary. Thank you, chat. I don't watch it while I'm running it, so I'm looking at it right now. So yeah.
Awesome. I'm going to hand things back over to you to take us back into the game.
Fabulous. Thank you. Let's kind of figure out where our scenes are going to be here. I actually have an idea. Well, Annie, do you want to go confront Sidewinder Shirlene about the letter?
I absolutely do.
I figured you probably would. Okay.
Well, and whether this influences your decision or not, that is going to be your task for the day also too.
Oh, okay. By the way,
I'm going to pass you around. Thanks, bro.
Okay, good. So then I think maybe I think we should probably have a scene with maybe Slade and Ambrose instead of both of you. I think that maybe you've gone off to go find Annie. I think I want to start with Annie though, or Annie's gone off to find Shirlene. So Sidewinder Shirlene is easy to find because she's always kind of lurking around you as of late, Annie. Where do you find her this time?
I think she's actually just in an alley around the corner where the wagon is parked. There's nothing really in that alley. There's no reason for her to be there. Mm-hmm. She's just kind of standing there.
Are you going to sneak up on her again like yesterday, or just walk up to her?
No, I feel like she's probably watching me. So okay. I think she would probably see me.
I think as you approach, she kind of does that thing where she's she pretends to drop something, she's oh, And then she looks up and she's like, oh.
Didn't see you there. Yeah. Oh, Charlene, right?
I've settled on Sidewinder Sally. What do you think of
It's
that?
not even your name.
I feel like when you are trying to make your myth, it's that sort of accuracy is not as important as the accuracy of your shooting irons.
Well, I'll give you that.
Right.
All right.
Are you still the Wildcat Kid?
I'm always the Wildcat Kid. I've always been the Wildcat Kid, and I'll always be the Wildcat Kid.
Boy, that would be some kind of legend, huh? The Wildcat Kid and Sidewinder Sally riding out west, chasing bandits, defending the honor of the defenseless. And
But the thing here, Sidewinder. The thing here is that I work alone. I'm
you mentioned
tasked
that.
alone to do my own thing. Have you been... This drive of yours to be a gunslinger, where does it come from? What's your purpose here?
Well, well, truth be told, I guess, well, I just, I don't know if you can empathize with this or not, Wildcat Kid, but growing up, I had a bunch of older brothers who were all going off to do big things. One of them even went back east to go to school, if you can believe it. And then my oldest brother, he inherited our family's land to keep working it. And another one of my brothers, he's like a math genius. And well, between them being what they are and me being last and a girl, I guess I just wanted to stand out. I wanted to distinguish myself.
Annie reaches into her pocket of her coat and pulls out a letter. It's an old love letter that she had received at one point that wasn't signed with a name, but did detail some of that exact same background.
Yeah.
Wait, is this you? Did you write this?
And she's like, yeah. She takes the letter. She's looking at it. She's like, no, this is so, this is pretty cringy stuff. I couldn't write anything like that. And she kind of.
Oh. Well, I got this letter.
Well,
some time ago.
What did you think of it? Even though it's like really silly.
I suppose I thought it was charming.
I
suppose I thought whoever wrote this may have had some kind of, she's kind of like staring at the ground now. Similar...
I think you've got her pretty well in thrall if you want to make an angle towards Jimmy and try to get something out of her.
Yeah. I think whoever wrote this might have had some similar, background like I did. And maybe this person's trying to help other people the best way they can. And she pulls out the other letter that she just found.
And she
dropped this.
She's like, oh, yeah. Go ahead and make the information move with presence.
Seven.
Okay. We'll come back to this scene. Let's cut over to Ambrose and Slade. Ambrose, where does Slade find you?
I think rehitching the mules to the wagon, after the conversation from that morning, just calming them down. It's the brothers having their follow-up conversation, after their talk with their younger sister.
Ambrose, when you lost your brothers, how did you come to the reckoning that they were returned to you as these mules?
Well, it's a good question.
That you can't answer unless you all get into a vulnerable situation.
It's really a story for another time. Let's just say, for me, there's been a number of inscrutable signs. Right, right, Augustine, and why did I pick all? I can't even keep my name straight sometimes. Right, boys?
Whenever you do feel comfortable, just know grief is a terrible thing, and there's no shame in whatever your answer is.
Okay. Well, how have you been? You disappeared last night before things got exciting.
Oh, yes, I went to Fort Bliss and uncovered some interesting things. I think, clue discussion goes on.
Yeah, I would suggest that because of the presence of Aquinas and Augustine, that this probably counts for the charlatan's vice of talking to the mules. If you do want to, if you want to invite the question, I guess you can go ahead and invite the question and answer it.
I'm happy to invite the question if we want to do that.
Yeah.
What
does that mean in game terms? Like, I feel like I'm.
Yeah. Do you want to read the vulnerable move out loud?
Yeah. We'll read it out loud for people, especially for people in the chat too. Gotta find it here. Yeah, it says, when you have an intimate moment with another hunter while one of you is engaged in your vice, you can clear an appropriate condition if you need to. If it's your own vice, and in this case, we're going to say talking to mules, it's the charlatan's vice, you can stumble on a clue like you did last time with Annie, or invite the other hunter to ask you about your past, which is what Slade was trying to do, right?
Right.
So,
yeah. And I also like talking about life and death is my vice, so it could be this can,
absolutely. I think you
Aquinas
created a safe space for sharing. Between the two of you.
It's all right. Annie's off about business right now. I think we can take a moment. Aquinas, you always tell it best. Why don't you start off? Well, I mean, yes, of course, if you're just going to go to the pithiest point and only state that, it's fine, I guess. But, well, you see, we were out on a long haul. It was we were young. Mom and Pa had gone out on a long preaching train, and we were out in the wilds, and we got caught in some high water, and Augustine and Aquinas, they got swept down the river, and well, when we came down to it, we couldn't find the bodies, but we did find these two young mules right around their age, and I was calling out the names of the boys looking for them. I mean, we all were, but these two mules just started following me around, and anytime I said the names, they would perk up, and finally I just asked if is that you boys, and they got excited. We've been together ever since, and I mean, you explain that if it ain't that river turned my brothers into mules, and that until we figure out what caused it, they're gonna stick with family. Mom and Pa have passed, but we keep Annie with us for as long as she'll stick around, as long as we can manage it, and I'm here until the boys are fixed, or until we all pass into what's next.
Of course.
Why? What?
Losing one's family like that to the river during the spring thaw is very difficult.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was during the spring thaw, but I mean, again, not lost, more like more transformed, more like they went into the underworld and came back out. Now you have a sister, right? Like, and your mom just passed?
Yes, I have a sister, and yes, my mother just passed.
What's that been like for you?
Confusing. It's been confusing.
Is that the only sibling you have? Are you just the two of you?
I have other siblings, but it's a different branch of the family. It's complicated.
I get that. You know, interesting situations always arise.
Mhm.
What have you ever lost any of them?
No, they don't perish easily.
Yeah. None of them ever got sick. None of them got lost in the war.
Lost, they get lost, but not sick. No, never sick.
Well, I mean,
But
good constitution's a hell of a thing.
yes, I miss them, and it's dealing with my sister in town has been very challenging. She is not like them, and so the family mores are very different.
Yeah, well, maybe you should just get them all together. Maybe invite your other siblings to come on down to El Paso sometime.
Ambrose, you always mean well, and yet you come up with the worst ideas. I like that about you.
You little frown.
Feels
What
like a good-
what are you up to today? And yeah, it's a good place to
feels
end
like a good
the,
cut.
Yeah.
end the move. Yeah.
You all can confer, share information and things.
Yeah.
Let's go back over to Sidewinder Sally and the Wildcat Kid. She says, I'll confess it. Jimmy Pike is helping me. He's helping me become a legend. I was out by that that trail that heads up to the mountain. There's a little hunting shack over there. I was out there just doing target practice, and well, truth be told, I wasn't having much luck with it. And I don't know where Jimmy came from. He must have overheard me or something, but he came and he asked me what my deal was, kind of like you did just now. And I told him that I wanted to be a gunslinger, that I wanted for people to remember my name. And he told me he could help me with that. But he didn't teach me anything about shooting. He had other methods for helping me find my power.
What methods? I don't understand.
And I'll tell you, just so we can memorialize it, your clue is he came upon her near the hunting shack. That's the clue. But the story continues. She says, he took me up to the tin mine on North Mount Franklin late at night when the mining camp was asleep. He took me up there and we went down into the shaft and he showed me things.
I've heard stories about what's in that mine, but
Wildcat Kid, I saw things that I can barely even come up with the words to describe. It's like we were completely shrouded in darkness. You couldn't see but a few inches in front of your nose. And yet when that thing wanted to be seen, it made itself seen. It's like I knew it was there, and I knew what it was. I could see it, even if my eyes couldn't. I can see it in my mind. I don't have the heart or the nerve to describe it to you, Wildcat Kid. But it was very old, and it was very angry, and it was very powerful. And I have dreamt of it every night since. And it told me with a proper sacrifice, it would share its power with me. And now I have to make a decision about that.
What does it want?
And then she kind of like looks down, almost ashamed. It says, in order to claim my legend, I have to dim the legend of another.
Charlene, I don't think you want to do that.
And she gets a little nervous and I think she just kind of runs away. But buried in all that was your clue, was how he found her. So, yeah. But obviously a lot of interesting context. So, I think at this point, let's just check in with everyone and see what everybody wants to do. We got maybe have another round or two of daytime scenes. Looking at your clues, you're starting to have a fair good number on this. It's a complexity 4, and you've got 3 so far, so a couple more should do you.
For the vulnerable move.
Or the vulnerable move. Yeah.
I'm not clearing Eyes of Gold. That's just, it's too good. I'm not clearing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I didn't figure you'd want to. Yeah.
I didn't know if we wanted to do a clue or a question though, also too.
Oh, I was saying that the question.
That was the question.
The bonus. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. I knew you didn't want to clear the condition, so I just skipped that part. But I'm curious though, Slade, what do you want to do for the rest of the day?
Yeah, I think I feel like I want to gather everybody up. I mean, I feel like I'm trying to like get everybody together and have everything's kind of slipping through. So I think I want to gather them at the funeral home and talk so we can get this done, and I can get Mr. Slade's mother in the ground, for goodness sake. Yeah.
Do you all want to go to the funeral home? I mean, do you have enough clues yet?
I actually think I wanna head out to that hunting shack and see if there's anything out there, since I knew that Jimmy was out there with Charlene.
Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, I'm down to go to the funeral home also too. I do think poking around in town makes a lot of sense at this point because we've been out a lot. Yeah. But I do like Annie going out to the hunting shack also.
Yep. Too. Yeah, I think I like the idea of Death not being able to gather people. Like, I think that's just funny. So I like the idea of like, this isn't Judd being frustrated. This is literally like the Death being inhabiting Slade. Like, you know, like, let's get everyone together. Why can't I get these people together? Like, it's so much easier when you just reap them and just like throw
and your
them
host
in an underworld.
Sister like wanting to know why can't we get Mom buried right now?
Right. I'm gonna go bury Mom. Like, I'm gonna go bury Mom. Yeah.
That's a great. Actually, let's have that scene.
Yeah.
I think let's have the scene with you at the Shields homestead picking up the body. I think that's what Annette has wanted you to do. And
yeah,
you can bring she has a cart you can even use to take the body over there. And she'll be sitting at a table with you for a bit, and she'll say, you know, Mother wanted more than anything for you and I to reconcile, Eli. She hates that things were so rough between us the last few years. But I just don't know if I have it in my heart what you did.
it was all my fault. I did wrong, and you need to take whatever time you need to find it in your heart to forgive me or not, as you know, on your timetable, not our mother's.
I like this as the day move, because you're trying to like resolve the situation without knowing what the situation is.
Right.
What are you afraid is going to happen if you fail right now?
I'm afraid I'm going to find out that Slade was the wronged one, and I'm totally like just off, like just 100% in the wrong direction. Yeah.
She gets angry or something. Go ahead and roll with composure.
Come on, where are the stats?
I don't know if you have something that you might have in your personal quarters that would help you with the bonus to get an advantage, but that's always an option as well.
Oh yeah. Let me look at that. Sorry.
I don't know if you do.
About that.
I don't know.
Revolver, collection of
unique body parts. I'm not sure how those things will help. It was
you know
just
what?
a random thought.
I take out the small revolver.
Okay.
And I put the bullet on the table, and I think the bullet has Slade's name on it. And I say, I'm sorry that I ever got you this angry. I can't imagine what would have led you to making such a thing.
Interesting. Let's just roll, see how this goes.
Yeah.
You can roll with advantage.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
You get 3 dice to take the 2 highest.
9 + 1 is 10.
You have to mark that item in your PQ, but otherwise you're good. If you want to mark Janus Mask, I'll give you a really good bonus on the 12.
I will absolutely mark a Janus Mask. Yeah, it's gonna be another sibling.
It's like a super good bonus. I have in mind.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah. Done.
Just tell me, like, give me like just the bit of the speech that you managed to elide saying what actually happened between the two of you, but still set her at ease.
I was immature and I was selfish, and it came out on you, and I'm very sorry. As I said, I can't ask your forgiveness for that, and you shouldn't forgive me because that's what Mom wanted. You should forgive me because you have found it in your heart to do so.
And do I understand correctly? The bullet has your name on it?
Yeah. It's like I got it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like I took it from her, or she like. Yeah. Yes.
She
like
takes it.
The gun was hers, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think she takes it, and she says, and she's looking at it, and she kind of like twists it around the bullet in her fingers. And she says, okay, Eli. I think that's what Mother would have wanted. And then you hear from the parlor where the body is being stored.
No.
Eli, is that you? She can't hear it. Only you can hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that you I saw coming up the walk?
I said, I think I turned to my sister and I said, give me a moment to make peace with Mom alone.
She's like, good. Yes, good. That's good.
Yeah, I'll go in the room, close all the doors, close the shades, and I can see in the dark. So, it's just me and whatever this is.
We'll come back to this.
Yep.
Annie, you can head out to it's the first part of the trail up to the mountains, so you can get to the hunting shack pretty quickly. We've described a lot of it yesterday, but what else do you do?
I think now knowing that Charlene and Jimmy were out here, and I know which direction they went up to the mines. So I think I am looking for anything they might have dropped, any indication of where maybe Jimmy had come from, horse footprints. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I like it. Go ahead and roll information move with reason.
Oh Lord, I'm so unreasonable. I rolled a 3. I would like to use a mask to make that better.
Okay, sure. Here's your clue. You see a cat. You see a cat come out of the hunting shack. And the thing about this cat is it looks really well fed. It's a cat out in the middle of the desert, and it looks really well fed, and it's not scared of you at all. And just kind of gives you like a puzzled look, like it expects someone else.
I flick it a little bit of candy.
Yeah. It'll just like kind of like turn its nose up at it. And then it kind of like saunters over. It saunters over to, let me see how I want to describe this. It saunters over to what appears to be a piece of like, it's like a trapdoor that someone has built into the ground and covered with some scrub, but it goes over and it's like pawing at that under the scrub. That's your clue. Well-fed cat that knows where there's a trapdoor over here.
Poor cat.
Indeed. And let's check in with Ambrose. Ambrose, what are you going to do for the rest of the day?
Like I said, I think I'm going to poke around in town a little bit. You know, where the big draw happens during the Wounded Night, so or during a full moon, so during the Wounded Night. And so I'm probably ostensibly working my way around town with a mix of information gathering and selling tickets. You know, classic saloon scene feels good also too, where money and alcohol runs free. So yeah, I mean, I think generally around town, if you've got a good spot, but that's kind of where his initial intent to set out to is.
I love it. You can go ahead and roll information move with say presence. I don't know if you can justify using a PQ item or not.
Presence is always what Ambrose is angling for anyways. And so, which is great because that's an 11. And so,
hey, there you go. Good. I'll give you some good info. We'll come back to it though in a bit. You go inside the room, Slade, and Eli and Annette's mother is laid out on a little sort of like a little book of bed, basically, in this that's been kind of shoved up inside this parlor, a cot. And her head just rolls over to one side, and her eyes, like, it's almost like she doesn't have like control over the muscles, and so her head rolls over and the eyes just like hang really deeply to one side, so she's not really looking at you, except for her face is in your direction. And she says, "You're wearing my boy's face, but you are not him."
Yeah, I think I walk over and like set, like very tenderly. I think, you know, we don't get to see this character touch people because he doesn't want to do what he does when, you know, he doesn't want to kill people, except when he does. Yeah. And so, but he walks over to her and just like lovingly, very gently, like turns her head for her so that she's in a better, more comfortable position, and like folds her hands on her chest and say, "Yes, I am wearing your son."
She says, "Oh, I know who you are now. I recognize that touch. Why would you want to pay me a visit twice, so close to each other?
What happened between your children?
Ah, terrible thing. Terrible thing. It was their father. There was a lot of anger and resentment. He was a violent old fool. A violent old fool. My boy shot him. And Annette, ever, daddy's girl, could not forgive him.
Okay.
But you knew that already, didn't you?
I needed to hear it in a way that made sense to you.
I put the question to you again, Reaper. Why 2 visits in as many days?
Because I am inhabiting your son, I have to deal with some of his responsibilities. And your body and its rest is now one of my responsibilities. And I was trying to talk to your daughter in the kitchen, and you were being very loud in the parlor, and so I am here.
Death incarnate, assuming the role of Undertaker. That has a peculiar irony to it, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
Oh. And she kind of laughs, a sort of weak laugh. I didn't know if I was ever going to be able to avail myself of such humor in this place.
It's good. That will serve you well from what's coming. A sense of humor almost always will. I will get you put to rest as soon as I can. Don't start walking around or getting ideas or airing old grudges, please. We have enough of that around here, as I'm sure you know.
And she just kind of smiles and says, well, even though it is false sentiment, I'm happy that Annette at least thinks that things are squared away between her and Eli.
I'll try to leave the situation better than how I found it. No promises.
You better leave my body better than you found it, Undertaker.
I'm
For a
afraid that's
start, I hate this blue dress.
all right. We'll have you buried in a different dress. I think he just shakes his head like, this is some petty nonsense. Do you know anything about these 3 rangers wandering about, confused from their swim across the river?
Do the information move with presence, and then we'll see what your dice are, and I'll...
Yep. I rolled a 9, plus 1 is a 10.
Okay. So I owe a clue to
Taking all
Ambrose
of Amanda's
and
good
to
rolls.
you. Yeah. Let me check in with Ambrose really quickly, and then I'll come back and give you that clue, and then that'll be the conclusion of the day phase.
Cool.
Yeah. I think I don't know if it comes up in conversation so much, Ambrose, but you notice something that you've never noticed before here in town. And that is there's a horse. The horse is, you've seen the horse before. The horse is frequently tied up on a post at one of the saloons. The horse sticks out to you because I think that Aquinas and Augustin, I think the three of them, they get pissy with each other, the horse and the two mules, for whatever reason. and you always have to kind of like have a situation with them whenever like the cart comes by. But you've noticed now for the first time that this horse has a Texas Rangers trail blanket tied to the back. This horse who you never see the rider, but you do see it parked around. That's your clue.
Okay.
And the clue that you get, Slade, the clue that, let me think about this. The Shield's mother says, or Slade mother, I guess, says, I have seen them. They have come up several times. They talk to me through this little window after Annette chases them off. They walk right by. They tip their hats at me, and I give them a polite grin. And always, they ask me about the boy. The boy. I know the boy. He did some work for us a while back. Hard work, but he was good at it. Digging trenches for the irrigation. He told me if he ever had to make a getaway, he'd hide in plain sight, right underneath our feet. Oh, the ironies are flowing today, considering I myself am soon to be put in a hole. That's your clue. And I think that concludes the day phase. You have a fair amount of clues now. So let's head over to the dusk and do what we got to do there. First things first, let's talk about the Wounded Knight and how it affects El Paso. Now, last time we talked about the children of El Paso. And I think we're going to go the other way tonight and talk about the aged of El Paso. Everyone, elderly folk around El Paso seem more vital, lucid, and otherworldly during the Wounded Knight. What activity do the elderly do during evenings of the season of the Wounded Knight that frightens children and adults alike?
They take. Oh,
Nope.
sorry,
Go ahead.
please go ahead, Tony.
You got it.
No, you go ahead.
No, host prerogative to go last. You got it.
Canadian prerogative to keep passing this back and forth. No, I'm kidding. I believe that the elderly, in the middle of the night, they leave their beds and leave the warm comfort of their homes and do a maypole dance
I shouldn't have let you go first.
town square in the middle of the night with colorful, beautiful ribbons, laughter and singing. But it's all at the singing is all in the minor key to make it extra strange, of course. But there's no music, just singing.
It's some R vibes. I love it. No. Judd, Tony.
My dusk square dance will have to go a different direction now. They'll come back having walked kind of into the desert early in the morning, covered in dust, obviously having exerted themselves in ways that oftentimes kind of defy explanation. And whenever anyone asks them what they were up to, they just respond, chorin.
Nice. I think old family stories and family lies become more clear. And so stories that they've told 100 times, they suddenly remember they've been telling them wrong. And that, they realize that a lot of memory is sort of manufactured, but it becomes very clear as like the dead are there to fill in details. And so they tell old stories they've told 100 times, but now with all new details that change the context of everything. Yeah,
I love it. Creepy.
Very inspired by my dad, who tells the same stories very often, and I'm like, wait, what? He'll tell a story, and I'll be like, well, it was when your uncle so and so had to leave town because of the mob, and I was put in charge of the family bar, and I'm like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, I was only 21 and I was in charge of the bar. And I'm like, no, rewind. Someone was on the run from the mob. Stop the story. So anyway, very much inspired by that. But yeah. Cool.
I love it. Well, let's answer the question. Where is Jimmy Pike hiding? You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have 6 clues on a complexity 4. If you can work them all in, that's a really good roll of +2. I'll review them now for folks watching the stream. We have the old clues still of 3 sets of horse tracks, but one goes back in the direction of the massacre site. Incidentally, worth pointing out, that crossed over with the hunting lodge as well, because that's where we originally found those. Sidewinder Sally was in connection with Jimmy. And in fact, Jimmy came upon her out at the old hunting shack and took her down to see the thing in the mine. There is a well-fed cat and a trap door out by the hunting shack. There's a horse that's frequently seen in town that has beef with Aquidus and Augustin, and we noticed now that it has a Texas Ranger trail blanket on it. And Jimmy was a hole digger in his new life, and he told Mrs. Slade that he would, if he ever had to hide, he'd hide in a hole. So the question is simple: where is he at?
Well, I have a theory that these cultists, these mining cultists, I mean, they're familiar with mining. They're good at building things like tunnels. If they have built over time a tunnel system underground outside of El Paso that has different entrances and exits, such as the mine at the massacre site, it would mean real easy movement for Jimmy, because he would obviously know where these are. Throughout that area. But if it doesn't lead out to El Paso, then he would need somebody to fetch him supplies every now and then.
And he'd have a horse as well, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Give him the horse. Yeah. That's the tunnels theory is pretty interesting, because it actually it suggests that those tunnels probably connect up to wherever the thing is too, right?
Mm-hmm. It also suggests that the miners probably know where he is.
Yeah, no,
that is true as well.
100% the way my brain was already working. So I'm very much vibing to hunting shack being a entrance to series of underground mines that you can potentially get out of town from, potentially get mines from, potentially close to wherever the weird thing. I mean, like it's a kind of a centralized egress.
But importantly, it does not get into the actual town proper. You got to come out and go into town proper like that. Yeah, that's good. That accounts for a fair number of clues. Judd, did you have any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think the cat, I'd love to incorporate the cat, not only the trap door, but as like a Lovecraftian element.
Okay.
as like a
familiar.
well, or cats in this area have long like made sure the thing in the mine stayed in the mine.
Oh, I kind of like
Like
that.
guardians.
Yeah,
kind of fun.
yeah.
I like that.
I like that.
Yeah, just thinking about like the old like Dreamlands cats in Lovecraft stories.
I mean, that could be a fun like little Wounded Knight detail. Maybe like during the Wounded Night, like mobs of cats like kind of run around.
Oh,
Which is where I got the wildcat idea from.
Right.
Ooh,
Yeah.
nice.
It's all coming together.
It's all coming together.
Good.
Very nice.
Okay, so let's take a look. We've got well, I think the well, let's mark off the clues we've used so we don't double up on those. I think the stuff with Sally is pretty straightforward. Just kind of indicates that he's out by the shack, and indeed has easy access to the mine, which feels important. So the tunnels, that feeds into the tunnels. The well-fed cat is interesting because it means that the cat is someone's taking care of it, which I think is that's what the implication is. But maybe more importantly, the cat's on guard duty. That's what we're kind of suggesting here.
Maybe the cat, part of what it's doing is its guardianship. If it's guarding either for or against, it might be just either being fed by Jimmy or stealing Jimmy's food.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Depending on if it's for or against this bad thing.
It does like further hint at the idea though that someone is feeding it. It could be Jimmy. It's out there by the shack. The horse is an indication that Jimmy has to sometimes come into town. That's what the horse is for, or he sends someone. And obviously
the mules don't like him, the horse, because they get like cult vibes off of it.
Oh yeah, that could be. Yeah, they just I like the idea of it's just something more petty. Like one time they, like,
one time this horse ate one of the
an apple situation. Yeah,
whatever the apocryphal name of the unrepentant sinner is on the cross. That's what we call that horse anytime we see it.
Obviously, the story about Jimmy that Jimmy gave Miss Slade feeds into all this. The only one I don't quite understand yet is why did one of the ghost riders go back to the massacre site? How does that speak to Jimmy's location?
I think maybe they knew about the tunnels. Maybe they found out about the tunnels, and they expect if they're trying to track down Jimmy, they don't know where he's going to come out. So one of them goes back to the massacre site where there is an entrance to the tunnel to see if he'll come out there.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
I like that. I also potentially like if we know he or someone comes into and out of town, perhaps that individual had maybe they got a sense of that, but they kept going beyond that spot also. I think either one of those makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and also it could be kind of one thing that might be kind of interesting too is we've established the idea that the ghost riders, or indeed it's written into the mystery, that the ghost riders like are easily confused. They might have thought the massacre site is where they were supposed to end up, and not the hunting lodge, right? Because they're on the same trail. So,
right.
Yeah.
Okay, I like it. You're at +2. It's a really solid theory. Basically boils down to the mining cult there are tunnels that connect up into the sort of shaft where the creature is, whatever it is, and that kind of go all over except for the township of El Paso. And so it sounds like whatever you do, you're going to end up in these tunnels, which sounds fun. Let's see if you're correct. If there's no other additions, let's go ahead and roll. Why don't you roll this time, Amanda?
Oh,
I
why?
say we could have Judd roll also too.
I know Judd's been killing it. Yeah.
Oh, what is that?
+2.
What are we at? +2? That is a 10.
Nice.
Woo!
So that means the resolution, whatever you decide, will be fairly straightforward. We'll mostly just narrate things as opposed to rolling a lot of dice. But I think the more interesting question is, what are you going to do? Because you have two options. You can help the Ghost Riders get their revenge, or you can defend Jimmy. What's this is the moral question. Like, what are you going to do here?
If we go after Jimmy, I think we have to go after all the cultists, because his big crime is culting.
But yeah, knowing kind of the widespread nature of this culting, that's a big portion of my customer base, and I don't think I'm into that. Also, as like Ambrose is certainly everything he is, but I think the concept of cruel individuals is very distasteful to him. Like lying, deceiving, thievery, other things like that. That's one thing. Persecution or murder or of the innocent is a very different thing. Fleecing the innocent is fine.
So then, I see. So you're siding with the Ghost Riders then, or
I'm
you're
siding with Jimmy.
You're siding with the cult. You're siding with Jimmy,
Yeah.
not the cult necessarily, but Jimmy specifically, because Jimmy chose them for the sacrifice because of their cruelty.
Correct.
Yeah,
And
okay.
also my customer base, right? Like,
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
there it
there's
is
that
both.
What do you think, Annie? Are you feeling defending Jimmy here? He's a part of a terrible death cult that feels problematic.
I think Annie will take them all down if she can, but taking down the ghosts is the priority.
Okay. So defending
Jimmy's
Jimmy.
just a man. I mean, you can shoot him anytime.
Well, and if this is going to be an ongoing campaign, you could probably take care of the Ghost Riders, but then have the cult as an ongoing problem, right?
Right.
So, well, that's 2 votes for defending Jimmy. Nevertheless, Slade, if you want to make a case otherwise.
No, I think, broken clock's right twice a day. Like Jimmy was right in this case. I think
Fair
we'll
enough.
put the ghost down.
So then resolve the threat by laying a trap for the Ghost Riders and then destroying them. Ooh, the trap is interesting. That's the real question. How are you going to lay a trap for them and then destroy them, whatever that means in ghostly terms?
Feed them to the thing.
That's not a bad idea.
Clearly, they were sacrificed to the thing. The sacrifice did not work. Otherwise, they would not have come back as ghosts.
Yeah.
Or not feed them to the thing. Is that like the line in the sand that we morally draw, and we put them out some other more?
I think that's the most interesting scene, personally. But
what if we feed him to the thing and then have Slade touch the thing?
So he kills the thing too.
So
Interesting.
Who knows? Depends on what the dice say.
The thing is, right?
And we don't know about Slade, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
Slade would say something like, "In strange aeons, even death may die." Like, I don't know if that's a great idea.
I mean, I think I think Ambrose's mode would be convince them to leave. Like, I mean, I wouldn't be motivated towards how do we shoot these things or kill these things. So if somebody wants to propose a violent solution, he'll go along. But
so here you would destroy them in the sense of like just uncoil them from the
correct, yeah.
realm.
Like
Okay.
whether that be by lying to them about completion of their mission, something else.
I'll take that too if you want to go that angle. But
yeah, but I mean, I don't feel like we have a very direct. I mean, Annie is, but being the kid also makes it,
I will say right now that Annie's going to be preoccupied this night phase.
Yeah, I figured as much.
I assume
that
doesn't
might
mean that's
be
not
on
what we're
Ambrose's
planning
slate
to do, though, right?
But in terms of the planning, though, yes.
Annie wants to shoot the ghosts.
Yeah, I think, in all honesty, I think that's probably the most reasonable plan. Like, I think given the construction of our group, the intent being let's just shoot them, makes the most sense. Now, that's like, as players, knowing that's not going to work at all is great to know ahead of time. But I do like leading with that. Yeah,
I just think that you're gonna have to figure out a way to like actually like
Bait them.
Yeah, because I don't think like just regular bullets are gonna work. Although damnation and salvation might, but I don't know.
No, yeah, and that's I mean,
All right, pitch.
Okay.
What if the trap is to use Jimmy as bait? Find Jimmy in the tunnels, use him as bait to get the Ghost Riders to where this thing is, and Jimmy knows where this thing is, so he could just tell us, as if I'll be there. And then once the Ghost Riders are there, decide then, depending on the situation, how to destroy them. Because we'll have a better idea of what to do once, the thing is more elaborated on.
I do, yes, as both, I think merging the character and player threads that we have, I think that feels good to me. Judd, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, plan set. In that case, let's go ahead and wrap up our phase here with Janus Mask. Does anybody have any Janus Mask they need to narrate?
I do.
Yeah. You want to do it now, or do you want to wait till dawn?
I would like to do it now.
Go for it.
I've marked the Darkened Threshold,
Oh.
which is a Mask of the Future. Count how many details you've written down for damnation and salvation. Narrate a scene with the one with the fewer details suddenly rusting to nothing in your hands.
Oh.
I only have one detail on one gun, that is on damnation. I think that it's settling into dusk, and Annie is sitting on a barrel just outside of her tent, and she's playing with her guns, and she has the letter from Shirlene in front of her, and the letter from Jimmy to Shirlene in front of her, and she's kind of just contemplating and thinking about the conversation that she had earlier, and thinking about the words that were so moving in this letter. And she puts down her guns and says, "No, I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to shoot. I'm not going to go up. I can, sure, okay, I have to do what this lady in gold says, but I'm the boss of my own self." And as she starts to actually feel that decision, coming to fruition and being solid in her psyche, the gun, this beautiful gun with the pearl handle, starts to shake and vibrate, and the pearl bits fall off, and it starts to look tarnished and red and rusted, and almost with a poof of gold, it becomes just red powder, leaving only damnation on the barrel, on top of the letter from Shirlene.
Oh.
And as that happens, even in herself, Annie feels this sort of grip in her stomach, the grip on her heart, feeling like nails driving into her, this hardening of not just, her insides, but the hardening of her own heart, of her own self as well. And she picks the gun back up, damnation, with its snaky kind of black horned handle, and pops it into the holster, tears the letter to pieces, and tosses it in the fire.
Okay. Any other Janus Mask?
Yeah, I've got one. I think we see me and my sibling Pestilence. We're watching like the last Neanderthal die, and I think we're kind of helping it. This is a big deal, even for us, and so we're helping it die with some kind of dignity. And there's clearly tension, and like as soon as the Neanderthal dies, I just say that was poorly done. You did not have, you were out of control for this whole century and more. You've been out of control. And Pestilence is defensive and says, like, I'm just doing my job, just do yours. And I say, the next time you do something like this, you can move your own souls. I'm not working with you again. And I walk away. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and introduce the unseen, and then we'll take a little break. The unseen for tonight is going to be, I never try to like overthink it too much, but I'm going to go with this one's kind of fun, I think. The Tumbleweed. It's on cell 117 of the in the unseen tab. Drying and dying all day long in the hot Texas sun means this tumbleweed is ready to hit the dusty trail. This weed begins as a titan among its peers, nearly 6 feet tall. And I'll take the first one. Judd, you can take the second one. Tony, you can take the third one. And Amanda, the fourth one. And yeah,
this
would be great.
This unseen, when I got a sneak preview of it, had a huge influence on one of the unseens in Through the Void also, too. It is one of my favorite ones in this set. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the tumbleweed one.
Very
It's
good.
fun.
I'm getting very, I don't want to like jump into really stupid Big Lebowski, old school Monty Python, but like I am reminded of that Big Lebowski moment where like you just see the tumbleweed rolling across the scene. It very much reminds me of that in a good way.
Well, and we'll be back to explore the tumbleweed and that unseen in just a few minutes as we come back for the final act of the Between Ghosts of El Paso, or 2-shot here on Plus One EXP. We'll be back in just a couple minutes. And we are back here live on Plus One EXP for the last arc of our two-part series, The Between Ghost of El Paso. It's been great playing with y'all these last couple days, especially on Halloween and All Souls Day, which are huge for our family, a huge part of us. I know Amanda hates this time of year, but I'm glad you made it a priority to be with us. I'm going to hand things back over to Jason to take us back to El Paso.
The tumbleweed. Just as the sun goes down, a stiff wind blows, causing the tumbleweed to break free from the roots that anchor it. What beautiful landscape does the weed first encounter on its long nighttime journey? I think it starts near a tent revival. There is a large white tent lit with lanterns from the inside, so it sort of just glows on the horizon as the sun's going down. Kind of glows and becomes almost like a counterpoint to the moon as it's rising. And the revival, there's a lot of singing, prayer, but then strangely, the revival comes out. People start walking out in line, and the tumbleweed is sort of blowing, and its path sort of arcs around to kind of, it almost like follows the line of people. They have gone out around a bonfire that's been built, and the fire is going, and now they're kind of like singing up praises, but the hymns they're singing are not any hymns that folks would recognize if they were to wander by right now. The fact that it's hymns being sung in a very strange language is lost entirely on the tumbleweed because it's a tumbleweed, and it blows on. It's the night phase. I'll remind you that one of your goals here is to make visual or thematic connections between the unseen and the night phase. That is called an echo in the night. And I think, tell me if I don't have the plan right, tell me, but my thinking is that you're probably going to like go to the tunnels and make sure the ghost riders are following you. And then, you know, is that the plan?
I'm assuming we tell them we know where Jimmy is.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, so you straight up, yeah. Well, yeah, because Slade made that connection. So they're just like with you then.
Yeah.
I like that. You're with them in the beginning too, Annie, even though I have other plans for you tonight. But you're all going down in the tunnels, and I think I just want to kick off here with a quick paint the scene. As you enter into these tunnels, they are, I would say they're surprisingly, over time, the miners and presumptive cultists, they have made them fairly easy to navigate because that's what miners do. They have laid down like wood planks so you can walk more easily, not have to trip over things. They've put handrails in particularly precipitous parts. So it has this worked quality. And yet, my paint the scene question is, these tunnels are the home of something down here. Something that walked the earth long before there were people. Looking around the tunnels, what's suggestive of that?
I think we see kind of along the sides of the tunnel what actually kind of first appear to be carvings, but when you look closer, you can tell they're the deep grooves of something scraping along these tunnels with much newer, though still very ancient, paintwork placed over them to cause them to catch in the firelight and kind of shift and indicate the danger of you being stalked in this space.
The different rifts and cracks in the tunnels and the walls, the way that wind, when it does make its way into these tunnels, the way that it blows across them, it's almost like pipe organ sounds. It sounds like music, but an ethereal kind of haunting music that also kind of, well, music, but also moaning from the deep.
There is one shaft that is sunk, and someone has actually written, and you can see because of the way that the stone is in that particular shaft, you can really see the layer, the geological layers very clearly. It's just very clear, and so because like the stone was blasted away, and because of the way that shale happened to be, it's just you can really see it. And someone has labeled, First Crusade, and then just under that, right, like just like a centimeter, birth of Jesus, and then like under that is like this weird white line, and someone wrote like comet, right, because like that line you can find wherever you split the rock deep enough, and then somewhere deep under that is like the shale becomes just strange, and it says this is when our Lord walked.
Fabulous. Judd, the tumbleweed. A few hours later, across the landscape, half the weed is fed to a campfire by a lone rider. What urgent matter distracts the rider just before the rest of the weed is given to the flame?
I think The rider is waiting till the morning to cross the river south and go home to where their people live. And the urgent matter is a just before the weed is given flame. Yeah, I think someone from their home has crossed to find them because they've been gone a while. And so the urgent matter is like they see their sibling and then throw the weed in the flame, or like the weed kind of comes into the flame and lights up the night. And their sibling says, like, how's it been in the north? And they say, we have to get south. These people are out of their damn minds. And yeah.
Good.
Then like I think the weed, I think the weed like gives a lot of light and then kind of burns away because it's not really a good, it's not really solid wood. And they're back in the evening night.
Indeed.
Darkness.
Ambrose, I think you are ahead of the group. Maybe you've all kind of split up a little bit to try to specifically find Jimmy because you haven't met Jimmy yet. And Ambrose, you do find who you assume is Jimmy. There's evidence in this little pocket of the tunnels of somebody who lives there. There's a bedroll, there's, supplies and things. And he kind of steps out of the darkness into your lantern light. It's just you. Nobody else is around yet, Ambrose. And he says, "Who are you?" He's a very, he looks very like, well, in the darkness it's hard to tell, but he has a bit of a gold glint in his eye, I'd say.
A friend to those who are friendly. I've come looking for you, but not to cause alarm. We have some visitors who may be joining us shortly, but we've come to the conclusion that some of your actions may have been very well justified.
I like this. I'm going to do it as a night move. I'm going to put you at disadvantage because of the gold glint in his eyes.
Yeah.
But I do want to know, what are you afraid is going to happen if you can't convince Jimmy that you're here as a friend?
Oh, I'm afraid I'll have to kill him.
Very good. And I have to say how it's worse than that. It's worse than that because you will anger the creature. The shaft. I think this is going to be presence disadvantage. You can cancel it out if you can work in a PQ.
Yeah, that's what I was just hopping over. I don't think any of the ones I have are particularly helpful, but let's take a look, because why not? I also do have I can also use one of my other moves potentially to offset that if the well, wait, we'll see how it goes. Let's see. Hunters. So many screens, so many things to do. I don't think there is anything explicitly that I have that will help me convince him at this point in time. So yeah.
Just roll 3, see how it goes.
Yeah. All right. Got a 3, which is fine. A 2, which is okay. And a 1. Yeah.
I'll take the fiction for a moment. You can cancel it in a bit with Janus Mask. But
go ahead and take it out.
He goes for his. He's too on edge. He's going to shoot you. You do have the Tuscaloosa toolbox move, which means you always have something up your sleeve. What is it?
I think in this situation, it is We'll go with two. We'll go with two fighting knives in this situation, since I've been a Janus mask in a second, anyways.
You get underneath his shooting arm, and the knives pop out of your sleeves, and just on instinct, you jam them up through his chin into his skull, and he shakes and quakes a little bit. And as he's dying, he smiles and says, "I'm not the sacrifice it wanted." And a cold wind blows through the tunnel. Now, if you put on the Janus mask, this didn't happen, but it's up to you.
Yeah. I mean, do we just roll with that? I'll put on the Janus mask. I'm going to do the Mask of the Past.
Okay.
Actually, you know what? Let's do the Mask of because have we done the Mask of
Revenge? No, you have not. Yeah.
The specific mask for this party, is that underneath?
Yeah. The Mask of Revenge, it can only be chosen once. It has been chosen, but everybody has to do something, which is during the dawn phase, each hunter will describe a time when they meted out their own justice.
Yeah. It felt good for this one also.
I think so too.
Also too. So yeah. Perfect.
Instead, you convince him that you are there to help. And he says, "So you've brought them with you."
The best way to catch prey is with the perfect bait, as I think you might already know.
Okay, good. I'm going to cut over to Slade. Slade, I think you're on like babysitting duty with the Rangers. And they say in that same like sort of triplicate voice that they always speak in, "Where is the coward Jimmy Pike? You were meant to take us to him." But we can't hear you, Judd.
Has to happen at least once a game, otherwise
Yeah.
bad luck. I am taking you to him.
What will happen once we find him?
You'll destroy him. What do you
Will
think?
you prevent us from claiming our justice?
I'm taking you to him. What do you think? What do you think I'm doing?
We have met you once before, Harbinger.
Yes.
It was
Yes.
not a pleasant outcome.
That it's really not my fault, but I understand how you would be upset. You live by the gun, you die by the gun. That's the way these things work. Heaven knows a lot of people have met me because of you, and it was not a pleasant outcome. People far more innocent than you.
Annie, you get kind of twisted up and separated from the others in the tunnels. You can hear them up ahead, finding them out to be too much trouble. But Sidewinder Sally, she kind of like is there. And she says, "Wildcat Kid, I have come to kill your nascent legend so that I can make it my own. That is what my dreams have told me. Dreams of that which is in the tunnels. Dreams of golden light. Where do you want it done? Out here? Under the ground? When no one can see, not even the stars? Or shall we go topside?"
Sidewinder Sally, I think I'll just leave that up to you, where you want to die. I'm sorry it's come to this, though. Truly am.
She says, Wildcat Kid. I came to believe that you and I were the same. This isn't going to give me any pleasure. And she gets into her shooting stance. Back to the tumbleweed. Tony, the remainder of the weed becomes snagged in a bit of errant barbed wire for several hours before a fleeing animal knocks it loose. What terrible fate is the animal fleeing from?
Yeah, we see the tumbleweed kind of fluttering as the sun sets behind it, and we hear the low kind of dull barking of dogs in the distance before what at first glance appears to almost be a fox, but as it comes into view is certainly a desert coyote that bumps into it, knocks it loose as it's running away from these dogs pursuing it, before we hear and see the crack of a muzzle flare right off to the side as the animal is shot dead by its pursuer.
Ambrose, Jimmy Pike. He says, I know where we should go and make our stand.
Oh, if you have a plan, by all means, lead the way. I'm not too good in a fight, but I've been known to hold my own.
I have something of a bit of experience with laying traps, you might say.
I've seen the results of your handiwork. I believe in your ability to bring this to fruition.
There's a chamber here, a big one. A place where we can lure them and get them where we want them. But the question is, well, I have an idea how to deal with ghosts. And he goes deep into the tunnel. You are right on their heels, Slade, with the Ghost Riders. Slade, how do you know you're getting closer to whatever the hell is down here in the earth?
I think it's getting harder and harder to. I'm getting disoriented the way the ghosts are getting disoriented. Angles are looking strange. Colors are looking strange. I'm just like, yeah, I think I'm having a harder and harder time figuring out what it is that I'm seeing out of these mortal eyes.
I think the ghosts say, how sad for you that you have to walk amongst us like this. Have you perhaps earned something resembling empathy for mortal kind? Having to stumble about in these imperfect bodies.
I know it's difficult for you to understand, but I've always had empathy. I've always tried to make your last moments as comfortable as I could.
Is that what you would call what happened to us?
No. That wasn't my fault. The cruelty with which you imaginative monkeys do to each other is not my fault.
Annie. Sidewinder Sally says, is there anything you want me to tell your brother after you're dead?
I'm sure I'll just tell him myself. And you, well, I'm sure I can come up with something very nice to tell your brothers. Don't want to tell them the truth, though. They'd be ashamed.
Oh, Wildcat Kid. I sometimes wonder if we are just pawns in whatever grand, terrible game is being played.
Well, if we are, I do plan to make it across the board.
Our last stop with the tumbleweed. Amanda, just as the sky begins to show first light, the last bit of the weed falls down a gully into a muddy patch of water where it begins the long process of degrading enough to drop its seeds. What will happen before the sun comes up to prevent this weed from leaving seeds here in the muddy ground?
The seeds fall to the ground in the water, the little tiny splashes, and it looks like they're going to start settling into the ground, with the water helping them grow. The poor coyote that just got shot is nearby, his body. The hunter that went after him in his big black boots come stomping through this little piece of mud and water, and the seeds stick to the crevices and the ridges inside of his soles, picking them up out of their new little home, taking them off on their own adventures, but they're not to be growing here.
Ambrose, Slade, the three Ghost Riders, Jimmy Pike, you are all standing on a ridge overlooking a pitch black gulf. Your lantern light cannot even penetrate the darkness of this pit, this crevasse, this tear in the earth. Ambrose, looking around on the ground, say, or on the walls of this chamber, what makes you think you might have accidentally stumbled onto Mr. Perdition?
The deck of cards that Mr. Perdition gave me has what at first glance seems to be a very modern, for the times, design on the outside of it. Kind of what seems like very intensive and cared for precision. But as you look closer, you notice that more so than all of that, there's an inlay to all of the designs that is rough and ragged and scraped. And that design, which is somewhat driven into my head from having stared at that deck of cards over and over again, I recognize that the ridges of this cave and the scrapings on this wall match that background detail of these cards.
There's a voice in the inky blackness, Slade, and it whispers to you and you only. Welcome, cousin. You are not needed here anymore. Indeed, you have no power or authority here. Turn back. Tend to your cattle.
Yeah, I think he says, I believe I'll stay, cousin.
At this point, Ambrose, I'll leave it, but the two of you both can narrate. Feeding the Ghost Riders to the yawning void. What does it look like?
Where has Jimmy positioned himself?
Jimmy is standing by the edge of the crevasse, the ridge. He's almost like beckoning them to come get him.
as they close in on him, and maybe we flank them one on each side towards Jimmy, playing into the bit for as long as possible. And I think maybe this is the point at which I do use my Tuscaloosa toolbox. And this time I pull out a Derringer that and that has a little bit of like salt packed in with the shot this time around, and just attempt to unload it into the back of one of their heads.
Oh, nice. The salt's enough to get their attention, and I think it works. Since you got a 10 plus, it worked on the answer a question. It works. It falls into the crevasse. Slade, what do you do about another one?
I think I grab it with my hands in a way that shouldn't be possible and walk it to the edge.
The third one reaches for Jimmy Pike, and they sort of like grapple each other, and they're sort of wrestling at the edge of the crevasse. And that's when we see lights, golden lights bobbing in the blackness. They rise up from the bottom of the crevasse, and they swirl around Jimmy and the third Ghost Rider. And then they get very, very bright. And when they dim, neither the Ghost Riders nor Jimmy are there, leaving the two of you on the edge of the crevasse. And Ambrose, an unseen person behind you, gives you a friendly slap on the back. Annie, Sidewinder Sally goes for her gun. Are you going to take her out?
I am. It's my mission.
Describe her death with damnation.
Sidewinder Sally is fast. We'll give her that. She wasn't just talking big. She's very speedy, and if she had come up against anybody else, she might have actually won this contest, but unfortunately for her, she came up against the Wildcat Kid, and for a moment, Annie looks a little regretful, a little sad, but once damnation is full on in her hand and pointed at her victim, that regret is gone, and she's only filled with the sense of purpose. The gun blast echoes throughout the tunnels and hits her, poor Sally, right in the throat, exploding her neck with sinew and muscle and blood. She falls back. The blood starts to form a little puddle. Her own gun, the bullets fall out and litter the ground like seeds. The wind blows through the tunnels. It sounds like prayer or singing. You could see the light shining from where the thing, whatever it is, way back in the tunnel is taking the Ghost Rider and Jimmy. And it looks like a sunset. Then it's all dark. Annie puts the gun back, damnation, into her holster and turns around and forgets about Sidewinder Sally. Before, of course, the gun goes back into the holster, the camera zooms in and we see on the metal part of the barrel, there's now an engraving in the black metal. It looks almost red, like rust or blood, and it's the shape of a pawn.
Let's go to the dawn phase, and that'll kind of wrap up our session here. So normally we would collect rewards because the threat was resolved. We don't have to dwell on it too much here because we're not continuing to play, but just to give you an idea what the rewards are for solving the threat. A Texas Ranger badge, which you could add to your personal quarters. If Jimmy Pike had survived, and maybe he did, he becomes a recurring side character. Fernando da Silva can become a recurring side character, or you can just name a memento from the investigation that you get to keep. So that's how that part of the game kind of works. If we go to the Dawn questions, I think everyone got an echo in the night. I picked up on echoes from everybody, definitely for Annie just now. And I picked up on, I don't know if you intended it or not, Judd, but I really loved the idea of like the other side of the river, and you said something really specific about like like your brother called you home, like all those things kind of felt really thematically interesting. Did you get one, Tony?
The unsuspected shot.
Yes.
After the plotting journey. Yeah.
I did note that when you did it. You all answered a capital Q question and you resolved a threat. So everybody's getting 3 XP just straight away from those. Wildcat Kid, did you get in a fight with Ambrose?
I don't think we actually had a fight. I think we had a talk and Annie wasn't really listening very well.
Did you protect Ambrose without him knowing about it?
No, I don't think so.
Slade, did you have a misunderstanding with another character because they perceived you as the host? Yes, Annette again. And also kind of the mother at first. Did you take time to puzzle over the human condition? I think you did that as well. You had a great XP night. Let's go to Ambrose. Did you blame someone else for your mistake or crime, Ambrose?
Only if we count the mules for the way I talked to Annie.
Oh, I'm into it. No, I'm into it. Did you tell the truth and pay a price for it?
I did tell the truth to Jimmy. I don't know if I paid a price for it though.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think we would maybe know more next time, but for now, it's unclear. Nevertheless, everybody got 4 or 5 XP, so it was a great XP haul. Then you'd mark New Dawn questions if you want, and then we would resolve playbook moves if it was necessary. I guess the last thing we'll wrap up with is just, I think everybody has the Mask of Revenge to narrate a time when you dealt out your own justice.
I can start. I got mine.
Go ahead.
This is some years ago. We see Annie. She's sitting on the barrel outside of her little tent, which is the back of the wagon. She's, again, playing with her guns. She has Damnation and Salvation, and she's spinning them, showing off. Up to the tent walks a kind of like a grizzled old man with a real shaggy mustache. He's drunk and he's angry. And he's got a gun. He goes stumbling up to the mules. Annie stands up and says, "What do you think you're doing?" He replies, "Your fool brother cheated me. I'm getting what I deserve. I'm getting what he owes me. I'm stealing these. They're mine. You stay away, little girl." Annie says, "I don't think you should do that, mister. You see, these mules, they're part of my family too." The man steps up closer to the mules, looking to grab them and start pulling them away by very loose reins on them. They're not tied down by any means. "I told you, little girl, you stay away. I got a gun and I'm not afraid to use it on you or your fool brother." And he steps closer and says, "Listen, mister. My brothers might be all asses, but they are my family. They are my brothers. And you're not taking anyone from here." And she pulls out her gun, Damnation, and strikes the man down. It's her first kill.
Very good. Stories of revenge.
It was supposed to be a small thing. Augustin and Ambrose had embarrassed me the night before when our parents were out on this long this long missionary preaching chain. Annie was a young child, but we see me in my late teens, and so I had taken and hidden their shoes from them, which was really just supposed to be the fact that the spring thaw was coming and we were in this long canyon, and I hid them, and they were looking for them for the next morning, and couldn't find them at all. Which wouldn't have been a problem until the water level started to rise and we had to leave quickly.
Nice.
Yeah, I think we see Death walking through this opulent house of some kind, somewhere far away, and it's the aftermath, the dusk of some kind, the dawn of some kind of after some kind of party, and laying amidst bodies. You might have just thought they were asleep until Death maybe touches one head and kind of turns it, and you realize that like everyone who has taken part in this orgy is dead. And Pestilence is there, and Death says, "Well, what are you doing?" And they say, "I'm enjoying flesh. It's fun. You should try it." He's like, this is a needless waste. It's like, no, I think I'm starting to understand humans better. I got the idea from you. What are you going to do? Kill me? He says, no, I can't kill you. That's a little bit more complicated, but the skin you're wearing, I can kill that. And Pestilence starts to starts to argue, and I think he just like puts his finger over, and the person she's riding, she's wearing, goes away, and it's just her. I turn around and say, "Let's go home," and walk away.
I learned it from watching you.
I literally just put that in chat. That's so funny.
Fabulous. That is our two-shot of the Between Ghosts of El Paso. Do we want to do a quick stars and wishes?
Yeah. I would. And also, like, we have a normal thing we do called a reaction roll. So general thoughts y'all have about Ghost of El Paso. If you have questions for Jason, it's a great time.
I'll go. Well. I'll actually look at the chat now. That'll be good.
Yeah, and we here, I'll do the normal intro text I do for it. This is our reaction roll. Reaction roll is a live stream inside of a live stream. It's our chance to sit down with the creator of a game we just played and talk about playing that game. Today we just finished a two-shot of Ghost of El Paso, the Between Ghost of El Paso, a campaign spin-off expansion for the Between by Jason Cordova and a few other amazing designers. Jason, people who are just joining us, tell us a little bit about Ghost of El Paso.
Yeah, so the game is based off of my game, The Between. So The Between is about monster hunters in Victorian-era London. They are trying to, it's inspired by Penny Dreadful and things like that. They're basically trying to keep the streets of London safe. And eventually they have to face off against a sort of Moriarty-style mastermind. Ghosts of El Paso takes the same mechanics and basic gameplay structures and transports it to be a game about, specifically about ghosts. And in 19th century El Paso, we have this vigilance committee who is tasked with sort of dealing with ghosts that are crossing into the mortal world during this particular period of time called the Wounded Night, which is a sort of strange phenomenon that takes place every 6 years in El Paso. And it's loads of fun.
We can just do stars and wishes first, but as people go around, if they have things they want to say, they're absolutely welcome to. For me, it's always a blast. We talked a lot about playing with people, but it was great to Judd and Amanda are in chat on channel fairly regularly, so got a chance to remotely. So as silly as it is, like getting to play with new people, especially people who are kind of like extended members of the +1 community, people who we don't get to interact with a lot, actually getting them on stream and spending time playing with them is great. It was an absolute blast. And yeah, I loved, like I said, we talked about it earlier, but I loved the sibling duality and that coming up also like as a secondary theme, but not as a primary driver was very good. Like just the consistency of being able to keep that in the background in a way that made a show about siblings, but also not that being the thing that's trying to resolve or clarify or anything else like that. Being a consistent theme was good and enjoyable. Something I would watch on a Saturday afternoon without a doubt. Jason, as always, like your ability to spin things up. We were playing Paranormal Inc. with Alicia a few weeks ago on stream, which is great. Carved from Brindlewood game, but whenever people would use a similar move to the way that masks work, it's GM-less, so there was no ongoing narration of like, here's how things get worse and worse and worse until someone stops us. And I immediately missed. I tried to do a Jason Cordova. It went weirdly British right away. It didn't work at all. I couldn't manage it. But it's actually one of my favorite things is the don't use it yet. Let's get a little bit into this. Let's see how it starts to go wrong. Let's see what looks bad. And tonight was it was a really great examination of like the immediate resolution was still very positive and exactly what I wanted. It was the what's worse, or it seemed to be a good thing to most observers. I killed the bad, like a bad guy, but knowing we were upset was great. And Amanda, another just star, you did a tremendous job. Like just the little details, right? Like all the little details for the Echoes in the Night and other pieces that you would bring in. I always feel like my Echoes in the Night are so heavy-handed, and you just have to do this great like light touch, like consistently on all those things. It's just tremendous. And Judd, great beard, you know what I'm saying? Like just no, that conversation that like I don't know that I've ever done 2 vulnerable moves in one session, but it created a really interesting like tone to this session, which was just really fun to explore within the context of the Between. So cool. I really appreciated that. That conversation was deeply enjoyable and fun to play back and forth.
Ambrose was such a delightful bullshit artist that I kind of was like, I want to like dig in a little there. So that was totally inspired by your awesome portrayal of him. I'm glad it worked for you.
Yeah.
I'll go next on Stars and Wishes. I really, I had a great time. This is a really, really fun 2-part game. I feel like we got like a really nice story in our 2 sessions, and we covered a lot of territory in terms of emotional territory, backstory, in terms of developing these characters, themes. Like we just hit a lot of stuff. Cinematic gameplay, like we just covered a huge amount of territory. Not a particular surprise to me because I made the game. I know how it goes, but I think you all did a really wonderful job leaning into the tools that the game provides, right? Like the Janus Mask responses were terrific. The vulnerable move scenes were really, really good. I felt like you all did a pretty good job, like, a really good job of like picking up what I was laying down, and what the game was laying down, because the game is laying things down, the keeper is laying things down, and you all were doing a great job picking it up and going with it. I have a particular star for the relationship between Sidewinder Sally and Annie. That was very fun to role play. Sidewinder Sally, even though she's a character that I created for this particular run, she's not in the threat or anything. She's just a sort of ad hoc character. I feel really connected to Sidewinder Sally as a character. Like she's a really good character. And so that was just fun. There was this like, we talked about like the theme of like siblings, which came up in so many different aspects of the story. But in some sense, obviously we know that Sally has a sort of similar background to Annie, but it almost felt like they were sisters too. It almost had like this sort of like, there was that too. It was its own kind of sibling rivalry in a way. Right. So I really, really dug that. I adored the conversations with the Shieldses and Slade. That was just so. I loved playing that dead mother. That was so fun, and that's the kind of character I love to play. Creepy old woman with who's seen a lot, knows a lot. That's a fun. That's my mode. So I really quite enjoyed that. And I think that this sort of like story that you developed, Tony, with the mules, and how you always like made little like references to the mules, but always took it back to the brothers and kind of worked in that sort of humor of it with Annie. That was very delightful, and I think it added a nice like levity to the situation, and which I guess is my last star. We did such a good job like balancing tones. There were parts that were very, very funny, and there were parts that were very, very scary, and also parts that were just like very, very grounded and human, and also parts that were really cosmic and weird. And so I just kind of loved the whole intermixing of it. I thought it was really, really terrific. So yeah, bravo.
A lot of similar stars across the board here. I loved those vulnerable moves with Ambrose. Where Ambrose was having a family intervention with the mules, and Annie was just so wonderful and honestly a little bit charming. It really felt like a vulnerable moment, and I really enjoyed that. I was enamored the whole time with the vulnerable move with Ambrose and Slade talking about where this idea that these brothers are the mules now came from, because it was such an evocative story. Now I want to know more about this river, and are these actually the brothers? Like,
well, and like
this?
The dramatic irony of Ambrose telling that story to death. Like, I mean, it was, like,
it was like, perfect.
Yeah,
it couldn't have been scripted better. It was so good. I really liked that. I really had a lot of fun with Theorize move too, the answer question
was great. Yeah,
it was a lot of fun. Really coming up with ideas, really kind of pulling things together. And I always love that move anyway, but it was really rewarding this time, as it almost always is. I liked the sudden reference to an orgy. It's not at the between game without an orgy. So good job, Judd. I think Judd, your Mask of the Past with War, I have that one written down in my notes as like big star, because I thought that was really great, really cinematic, and just fun to listen to. I loved the Tumbleweed Unseen. I hadn't read that one before, and it was just so great. Suddenly this main character is this tumbleweed, and I was rooting for it. Jason, the Mr. Perdition reveal. Oh my God. Like, I've played a lot of games with you, and one thing that's really wonderful about having you as the keeper is that I can't really predict what you're going to do. Usually when you play a lot of games, you can kind of get an idea of where they're going to go with something, and that one just came out of nowhere. It was awesome. Yeah, just really, really fun. Ooh, lots of stars.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, my stars go to Jason again. The Unseen is so cool as just a tool, and I am straight up. I don't have we don't have a Thursday night game this for Thursday, but I have a Thursday D&D night. I'm totally going to use it as a way to establish the different weird worlds that we all end up in. I love it. I can't wait to write one. I'm super excited for that. And the paint the scenes and when you ask questions of the players is really good. I feel like when I look at new GMs, and we probably have more new GMs right now than we ever have ever, there's a huge fear of like, what if I don't know what to say? And like, I feel like the technique of like, hey, all you need is this much evocative stuff, and then ask them a question, and they will give you more and inspire you. Like, go to your friends, which has always been what I've been saying forever. And so it's nice to see that technique used in such a great way, and to have examples of it. I'm definitely gonna look back on this video and pick those out. And it was nice to meet Tony, and there's this like thing that happens particularly before the pandemic, but I'm sure it'll happen in some other way now, where you know someone and you kind of like their work, and then you game with them, and then hopefully at some point you're at a con and you share a meal, and then you're friends. And I like saw it starting to happen with Amanda, and now I've started that process with Tony, and it's nice. Hopefully in a when we reach a post-pandemic world, we'll all be able to share meals and go from like, oh, that's a gaming acquaintance, to like, oh no, that's a friend. We shared a meal. It's real now. It's a thing. So yeah, it's nice to start that process, and it's just great gaming with you both. I loved the way that you both played the siblings, and it wasn't overdone and it wasn't goofy. It was really good and kind of heartfelt and nice. I liked it a lot. So yeah, totally big stars for the way you both handled that. Very nice.
So reaction roll, we typically just talk about our general thoughts on the game, but also if there's design things you want to talk about, if there's questions you want to ask about, observations you have about Ghost of El Paso versus The Between, or Ghost of El Paso generally, great time to drop them also to chat. If you have questions, if you have stars and wishes, type of in. I wish we could keep on playing forever, but it's a two-shot. We're done. Maybe sometime again in the future, and definitely when the next spinoff campaign works, we'll be back here also too. I'm sure multiple times in the future. I have some narrative ones that I just think, I mean, a tremendous time, right? Just obviously from the conversation. But I love also just taking in those little mechanical and narrative bits that are different. And I've only played The Between once, but I've read a lot more of it than I did Ghost of El Paso. Two mechanical things. One, the characters in Ghost of El Paso feel much more unleashed. Like watching Amanda, just even another star, like you destroying one of your guns, the suspicion track for the charlatan, they feel designed to ramp up far more quickly, which is a mechanical question in some ways, but it also feels tied to The Between is ongoing. The Wounded Knight happens once every 6 years. Narratively, Jason, I think my biggest question is the difference in those kind of changes some of the shape of play. How do you see campaign in this setting working? Or how do you see campaigns in this setting working versus Core Between, given that kind of narrative shift or conceit?
Yeah, well, I think that it's probably worth pointing out like what our intentions were when we were making the playbooks in terms of how we wanted the characters to be, especially vis-a-vis The Between, because that's what we were sort of, that was our point of reference. And it wasn't so much a consideration of like, okay, this is how long it'll take them to last in a campaign or whatever, because just on the numbers and just from playing both games quite a bit, pretty much every playbook in both games, except for the Undeniable in The Between, all of them are pretty much done after one campaign arc. It's very hard to go beyond that. The Undeniable, that's not the case. The Undeniable can go on for quite a long while after the first campaign arc because of what they have access to. And they're an immortal, so that kind of makes sense. But the more interesting question, I think, or the more interesting observation for me, is we wanted the characters in Ghost of El Paso to feel more mythic in nature than the ones in The Between. The idea was you've got literal death. You've got the kid who is like supposed to be this, they're not yet, but they're trying to be this like big figure, this big mythical character. You've got the charlatan who is almost like the classic trickster, and you have one of the playbooks, which is the bootstrapper. This character is like larger than life, like they are the town, right? Like, so yeah, these characters have like a bigness that I think is very appropriate for the genre, and also I think speaks to an idea that I'm always very interested in, which is this idea of like deserts and the Wild West being a land of myth, right? Because it is American myth, right? But it also, there's this idea that it's like some other kind of myth as well, as we saw going down into the tunnels beneath the mine, right? Like, so that's kind of the idea. Whereas in The Between in London, the characters are are very interesting and powerful and evocative and sensual, but they are just a person in the middle of a gigantic metropolis, right? And so the scale and the scope is different, right?
I think
these are big fish in a little pond in El Paso.
It's more that quick escalation, I think, that caught my eye than it is, like I said, than it was like length of time in a campaign. Like they arrive at something very quickly that it seems like the core between kind of simmers towards.
It does indeed, yeah. And I think that's probably a correct observation. I mean, I think that it really kind of depends on the moves you choose in both games, and but I think the really key thing though is that like it's like in between in London there are so many things going on in that city, and there's so many problems, and it's stuff that nobody will even, 95% of the city will never even hear about, right? Whereas in El Paso, everyone knows, right? Everyone knows about the ghosts. Everyone knows about the Vigilance Committee. Everyone knows, like, we're all kind of in this together. It's not a very big environment. And these people who we've set aside to be the Vigilance Committee, these are our, they are the people who are kind of answering the call. And so, yeah, that feeling of like immediacy and mythical quality and bigness is supposed to be really pronounced in it.
If I may cut in really quick, just for a quick observation, I've played a lot of the Between. I've been through quite a few sessions with Jason, and then Chaotic in chat ran a whole campaign that I was in. It was a lot of fun, and I played a lot of Ghost of El Paso now, and I find that there's a really big difference in when you're playing how it feels to be playing the Between versus playing in Ghost of El Paso in terms of how you interact with the side characters in the world.
Yes.
There's a lot more familiarity with all the NPCs, etc. in Ghost of El Paso because of this whole big fish, small pond, versus in London, the Hargrave House people they're kind of hidden in this world. They're hidden in London. They're trying to keep all their secret things secret, versus a lot of what's happening in El Paso is very maybe not performative, but it is definitely out there for everyone to see.
It's on stage.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So you get a really different feel for when you're doing the threats in Ghost of El Paso. You have more of a feeling of responsibility towards El Paso than you do towards London when you're playing the Between. And I think that it's also really reflected in the playbooks. In the Between, you are generally not great people doing some bad stuff. And there's also, you're saving London. So it sort of feels like there's that more hidden aspect of and the hidden badness, which isn't quite as apparent in El Paso because you're out there and facing all of your people and facing all of your threats and being on stage all the time. And it's just...
Yeah, it's really interesting when you're running the game, just as a kind of piggyback off that comment, Amanda, like when you're running the game, that is one of the big differences is the side characters in Ghost of El Paso, they recur. Like you see them a lot. They know the player characters. They're always, they show up a lot. You put them in danger. Lots of the threats are written to put them in danger. Like there's a lot of, of that. Whereas in Between's London, they just get kind of, it's just a big city, and you might see them for this mystery a couple times and then you'll never hear from them again, so yeah, it definitely affects the feel and the tone of it a lot for sure. Yeah. And neither is better, to be clear. I just think it's just different. Yeah.
But I'll also say there's a lot of ways in which that makes Ghost of El Paso match the Americanness of it too. Like
I think
in a lot of ways,
yeah.
like I even loved. I think it was Judd who was like, "Yeah, it doesn't happen across the river." Or maybe that was Jason, but I think it was Judd. Like the Wounded Knight, maybe doesn't happen across the river at one point.
Oh, that's in the setting. Yeah, it does not.
It does not happen across the river. Yeah, okay, I can remember which one. But I
Paso
love
del Norte, which is modern day Ciudad Juarez. Like, it's not affected by the Wounded Knight at all. I
loved that little beat as a piece of like, oh no, that's it, because that would dramatically shift the tone and the narrative settings. And so, like, if it was this broader event, and like I said, I just absolutely love it as part of the conceit of all. I very, very excited. Like as always. My other thing I think was the describing something about the city of El Paso at dusk. Is that new, or was I just forgetting it from?
That's how. So in the Between, what you do is you talk about Hargrave House.
That is correct. Okay, I was trying.
Right.
I was like, I knew we weren't talking about Hargrave
That's the
House, but I
equivalent.
couldn't
Yeah,
figure
that's the
out.
equivalent. The equivalent
Excellent.
is you talk about the town and how the Wounded Knight affects
Excellent.
it.
Yeah, I was
Whereas
trying
in
to
the
figure out
between,
what the shift
yeah.
there was and why I wasn't remembering that. But
Yeah.
and earlier I had noted Hargrave House, of course, wasn't going to be a thing because of
Yeah.
the dwellings and the shift and some of the other pieces, but I couldn't remember what. And so, because I also know you've talked about including moments from Trophy and other pieces also too, and some of your other design elements also. So I didn't know if there were some other pieces coming through there too.
Moments are in both games, and now they're in Brindlewood Bay too in the new
Right.
version. But no, yeah, like one of our initial design challenges when we were making Ghost of El Paso, which was a pretty easy design just because it's more or less the between, like they're pretty straight port, but or at least in terms of the mechanics. But one of the things we did bump into is, well, during the Dusk phase, there is no Hargrave House. There is no shared space with these characters. Like the town is their shared space. And then I think it was me. I had the idea of like, well, you know what? Let's learn about what the Wounded Knight's all about, right? Like, why leave that on the table? Let's not leave it on the table. Let's have an opportunity to talk about the wider implications of what it means. It's not just ghosts. It's all kinds of weird shit, you know? So yeah.
I love it. I talked a lot there. Sorry. Amanda, Judd, did you have any questions you wanted to ask Jason? Any observations about the Between Ghost of El Paso or anything else?
There was one weird word I used that if I could go back, I would change it. And I'll mention it since this is all going to be recorded. It's good to have it on record. I think at one point my character was trying to talk about humanity and he referred to them as monkeys. And I would have used primates just because monkeys can have a racist overtone.
Oh,
to, like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I wanted to show that Death was a little frazzled being that close to something, catonic, but primates would have done it. And so anyway, that was just like a weird thing that I like had down on a note and I would have done differently.
Yeah, it rings the ear a little funny. It did for me too. I didn't really give much thought beyond that though, because in a role-playing situation, you don't always use your perfect words,
Yeah. No, I know, but we're recording it and we're out here in the world, so I definitely wanted it.
I appreciate it.
I X card myself a little.
Post facto X card.
Well, no, and I'll even say, like, it's a game where there are some of those elements, because it's even like when I was talking about, I don't want to fetishize Native Americanism at all or play into noble savage tropes early, which wasn't required. And so being conscious of those things and being comfortable and then being accountable for them is a huge part of what we do here on channel. And I love Gauntlet Games, and Jason's design tends to enforce, let's be accountable to these things and let's be aware of these things in very conscious ways. And so, absolutely.
Cool. It's neat to see these games like taking place. It's weird. I know Jason, but I heard about The Between from a friend of mine who lives down the street who was like, have you heard about this game, The Between? Yeah. And I was like, what? And he explained, like, the way I first heard about The Between was not Jason being like, hey, I'm making this game. Do you want to play? It was a friend of mine down the street and I going for a walk last summer, and he described how the Frankensteinish
he was excited about the mother.
How like the mother creates the child. And I was like, what is going on? I don't like, the indie scene is now so big that like friends are building things and I don't even know that they're doing it, because everyone's so busy and productive. It's cool. And it's neat to see it in different settings and how that affects things. It definitely, having played, a couple weeks ago, I played The Between, and now playing Ghost of El Paso, it does have a very different feel. And the way you all articulated it was very apt. It's good that because I would have fumbled trying to figure it out. So it's nice to hear it. It's interesting. The playbook design is also really, really, really good. I keep looking at it and being like, oh, I see where they got that. Oh, wait, that's a whole other thing. Like, it's just like all of these, like, there is not a death-related TV show or piece of media or comic book that hasn't been pulled on for this one, the one that I played today. But like, all the different and the way that they're all mixed together and blended is really nifty. So really, really, really good playbook design, which I think is an underrated skill.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that my co-creator on this, Daniel Qualls, gets a lot of credit for because Daniel brought us the original idea and drafts of all the mysteries and the playbooks. We changed quite a lot, but we had that initial sort of a lot of that initial groundwork was laid by him.
Nice.
Daniel is the one who showed me all the unscenes, and it was, like I said, it was tremendously helpful to see a completely different scope and type of unseen than the between. Even though they serve the same function and work the same way, it's about broader Texas and much further afield than what happens in London. It gave a lot of permission to think about unseens in different ways, just from a narrative standpoint. So huge thanks for that, Amanda.
I was thinking what Judd was saying about how good the playbooks are and how well they're laid out with all these references. And I think that's just another really cool thing about the Between and the Between Ghosts of El Paso, the books, how you've set them up like at all. You have these references so that when you read about a character or a playbook, you have these references in mind that give you all this context, but you still have so much room to manipulate it and go with it. One of my favorite things about the Between and the Ghosts of El Paso are that you can start playing a game and not really have a good idea of what your character is going to be like, and it happens so organically as you play, developing these characters into these fully formed, like, complicated people, and I think that's a lot of fun. There's also the aspect of how you've written these books to make them so easy to run and play for people that might not be super comfortable playing a game like this or running a game like this, or have never done anything like before. Even people that have run games a million times, it's just so easy the way it's laid out.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I have to say the most gratifying part of Brindlewood Bay and the Between these games has been the fact that people are playing them. That makes me really, really happy. Like I want our games to get played, and I want to give them the tools to play them, because I feel like that's what we're all here to do, right? But also, I just like the idea that that I might be able to share what I've I've done my Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours of GMing, right? I'm glad I'm able to share what I've learned with people in this way, and that's the last time I'll ever compare myself to Malcolm Gladwell in any way. But I'm glad I'm able to do that. And when I was writing the Brindlewood Bay Keeper section, which is in the new book, it's a piece of writing I'm so proud of, because I like to think that I'm equipping people to really get in there and do it. And so the fact that people play the games makes me super, super happy. It's the thing I love the most about it. So that touches my heart. I like that a lot, because that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to play games and run games. So all this other stuff is just tertiary to that. So I'm glad other people are doing it too.
Yeah. The only other game I enjoy where my characters end up as much as I have enjoyed Between characters is Apocalypse Keys, which is very carved from Brindlewood also. Where
it's got a lot of the same DNA.
Yeah, I feel like I'm following this character around, and yes, I'm making choices, but I'm making choices like a driver does for the engine. It is pulling me along.
I think one of the things I think is really that I've discovered about my own design in doing these games, I don't think I really understood this until I was doing it. It is I do put kind of a tight frame on things, there is a frame, there's a frame in the structure of the game, there's a frame in the playbooks. But what I'm hoping is that while the frame is fairly tight, you can go pretty deep. That's my hope. It's not wide, it's deep. And if that's what the games accomplish, I'll be very happy by that. Yes, every Hargrave house is going to have, this type of witch, this type of Dr. Frankenstein character, this type of, Dorian Gray immortal, but hopefully there's space to go really deep with those and explore themes and explore ideas and explore, we got this really fabulous sibling rivalry thing that just happened organically as we were playing these two sessions, so that's a good outcome to me. I love that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it was neat to see that happen in real time, where we knew two characters were siblings, and then you said how do you know Slade's name? And I'm like, oh, his name is inscribed in his shirt lovingly, probably from his mom.
Yeah.
And you I saw you just okay, got it. And you can watch that happen in the first video. It's really neat. I could definitely talk for another hour and be like, hey, how can you use Unseen in other games to
steal all my tech? I don't mind. Do it.
Yeah.
Use it.
I talked about it the other day. Unseen is one of the most portable pieces, and there are a number. Jason's done a great job. If you're interested in more of that, because we do need to end. I've kept everybody 30 minutes over to gratify my own crapulent needs and feed Jason's ego too. But you do a series of really great creator workshops for a lot of your games. So people are interested in the type of design you do. You do that, and I know Unseens will come up regularly within some of those conversations. So a lot of it's over on the Gauntlet YouTube channel. Go check it out.
That's my YouTube channel. But
on Jason's YouTube channel, not the other one. And so, but with that said, it has been a long session. We've got some great stuff coming up from the cult. We are actually just one follower away from hitting 1,200 over on Twitch. So if anybody wants to hit follow right now who hasn't already, go ahead and do that. But if not, we will be back, of course, the next little bit. I will be fairly quiet during November. We do have a couple streams that I'll be doing, but not a lot for a number of reasons, but mostly just because I have a lot of work getting some of the Balm stuff we do and a lot of design stuff up and going also too. So it's a very busy month for me non-content wise, which just means less content. However, the Cult EXE, Sarah and Keegan will be doing a ton of great stuff this month, and I will be doing about one stream a week. Still, you'll just see a little bit less from me. We've got some really great stuff coming in December also too, as well as some major plans for next year on Plus One EXP. Great ways you can support us. Follow us, subscribing here or over on YouTube are all incredibly helpful. Support us over on Ko-fi, or just go to plus1exp.com and buy games that we make from a lot of the great creators that we feature here on stream that are either printed by us or that we've purchased and are selling for them, any number of things. But anytime you buy a game on Plus One, the majority of that money is actually going back to the creator of that game, not to us. So please support us and support them also too. But with all that said, we don't have a good way to end things here on stream. And at this point, we're not interested in figuring one out. We're just going to wave at the screen until I take us all offline. Bye, everybody.